So, hey everybody, welcome to our first oddball podcast. I don't know, we'll come up with a name for it, but so I'm gonna do some introductions and we're gonna let them introduce themselves. So, Ronan, do you want to tell them about you, when you started playing the game? You know, your main character, like what your favorite character was, and I know that you have different information than everyone else for how often you play the game now. So, just want to jump on that.
Yep. So for the most part, I started playing on launch, at least when NA servers launched. Uh, I played for probably 40 to 60 hours a week for the most part, pretty heavily, and I worked full time, so it was kind of rough. But I have recently quit after I got some kind of discrepancy over my account. I got banned for a while, about a month, and I never got a reason for it, so I recently quit. But I'm kind of keeping up with the game here and there, and now I get a little bit of outside opinion on it just because I'm playing other things at the moment, and I may come back. I also had a roster of 6, so I had a lot of time, and if you want to go even further, I had a roster of 19, just the top 6 were all in the high-end content.
And you're
With a couple that dropped out. My main character was Reaper, but I also played quite heavily into Shadow Hunter, and I would say Scrapper is or Slayer and Scrapper are my next two down.
Okay, thank you. And then Lights, do you want to talk a little bit? Try to follow along with the same linears that he had. That was really good.
Yeah, I got you. So I started when the game first dropped. I started a week after, so I missed the founders pack, sadly. But I quit before Argos came out, and I came back during the Hyper Express for the Slayer. So I've been back for what 3-4 months now. But my main and my favorite character, half my roster is all Slayers and Deathblades, so I'll have a decent amount to say just from experience when we talk about Entropy. It's pretty much my whole roster is Entropy. But yeah, so I am a new slash returning player. I don't have that much time in the game, but I do have a huge roster, 16 characters. So yeah, I'll share the perspective I've had from returning.
Okay, and then last Buttery, do you want to take over?
Yo, I'm Buttery. I've been playing Lost Ark since like a couple of days after lunch when I saw Asmongold streaming it. Sadly, I missed out also on the Founders Pack. I currently have close to 3,999.2 hours of playtime. I've spent a good 2,000 of that on Shadowhunter, and then recently I switched to Ignite Assault as my main. I've been playing Ignite Assault pretty religiously since just before Akon and Belshazzar Hard. Because she's a lot better than Shadowhunter. Yep, that's me.
Okay, so can we add one thing to all of this? Ronan, what region did you play in?
I played an East Coast service,
Okay, and
though I think I had a couple characters in West as well.
that's cool to know. But primarily East.
Yeah, primarily East. The characters that were in West made it to tier 3, but never far in. I also would like to add, I kind of had a question. Everybody here, what was your playstyle like? How did you play the game? Did you play it hardcore into like a static, or did you play more on a casual front? Because personally, I played a lot. Originally started with a guild, and I got into a very big teaching role, and I've done a lot of teaching stuff with both high end and low end players, as well as static stuff. I was kind of curious on that.
So for me, just to answer EM's point, I play on EU. I was on Europe West server the entire time. Started on a server called Moonkeep before we got merged into Neo. So shout out to Moonkeep players. And I've been playing the game pretty religiously every day, barring days I can't play because of personal reasons. I've always played with static or people to play with. In fact, Volton hadn't it just been announced, and I was already preparing a static like 2-3 months before it came out. So I've always kind of had a static or like guildies to play with.
So
Okay.
I'm playing out of NA West. Hardcore static. I mean, I'd say hardcore but I don't run. I play the game hardcore. I've done all of my content. Granted, I do them rested, not unrested, but I don't miss the rested content pretty much ever, basically. But I still get all of my raids done early in the week, but I just don't have a static for the raids or anything like that.
Okay. I think that was actually really good. That's a good introduction for everybody. It gives everybody a little bit of where your perspectives are coming from, which are very different, which is kind of what I love. I'm not going to introduce myself. Anybody who's watching this probably knows who I am. Or I hope. If you're new, uh, I'm Evolved Mentalities. I play NA East. I play a ton of characters. I also play Rested like Lights. I've been playing since about a month after the game came out. I spend quite a bit of money. I'm about 4,500 hours into the game. And a favorite character is a really hard question for me to answer because I really love them all and I have mental issues. But you know what? The Deadeye, because we'll stay true to him. And I think that covers it. So
That's another thing we should go over. Actually, is anybody F2P?
Actually,
Well,
or close to it. Close to under
I was gonna
$100
say
or under 500 would technically
oh no,
qualify.
I think I'm like over $2,000, but I mainly swipe on skins.
I would
for
probably.
the
The-
most part,
Yeah, go on.
oh sorry, I will say for the most part, I'm fairly free to play. Most of my purchases have been skin oriented or just power like the ARK pass when it came out. I mean, I would call myself like a guppy, I guess, if I spend like $20 here and there. But
Like
it
a
was never
dolphin.
like
We're coining
buying
that
gold.
guppy. I'm saying, fucking, that's funny.
Okay. At least we have one person that can share a little bit of the free to play perspective, because I'm definitely a spender and so is Nick. So
Yeah. I only whaled one time for item level, and that was Vickers Hard because my entire group wanted to do Vickers Hard, and it was the most brain dead shit ever. We should not have pushed for Vickers Hard because that unreleased was like it was so hard.
The word I was thinking was miserable, but yeah.
Yeah, miserable works too.
For you say for Vicus?
Yeah, because my entire stack wanted to push Vickers Hard, right? So I was like 5 eye levels off hitting it, and it was coming out next week. And I was like, I have to swipe for this if I'm going to be playing with them.
I mean, yeah, I guess to be fair, that was also one of the biggest points where it was kind of splitting when they did the raids on the launch. Like they launched at two different power points to get in, right? You could just do normal or hard on launch.
We were so undergeared for Vickers Hard back then. We were 4x3, barely level 5 tripods, mainly level 4s. Most people had level 5 gems. Barely anyone had like Lost Ring Cliff 12 or Light of Salvation 18. So bad. Compared to now, obviously, where everyone's Giga River overjuiced.
So keeping the train on the tracks, we're gonna start with our first bullet point. I don't know if you guys want to pull those up, and or we'll just talk about it. So I'm picking number 9 for our first one, which was the support shortage at the top. There's not really a method to how I'm gonna pick these. I'm kind of just thinking about it as I go, which ones I think would be best first. But so the support shortage at the top, and what I mean by that, I guess I'll start with my perspective on it is. What I've seen is in a com or watching is there's a lot of groups that are just sitting there and waiting for support, which we thought would be fixed by the release of artists and by all these express missions and people making supports. But it seems that people aren't having as much fun with supports in the game. And I know that they made comments in the Gold River stream about how their plan is to make supports feel more validated in the raids, make it seem more fun for them other than just the supporter buffs and the healing buffs, the Noble Healer and the MVP scream. So I guess what I'm saying is, what do you guys feel about that? Do you have any solutions to it? Do you think there is a good solution to it? And do you like the direction that they're going with the supports?
yeah,
Actually,
I feel like
We'll follow the
sorry.
same. No, it's okay. We'll
Yeah,
follow.
let's do that. Yep.
Follow the
I get you.
same as the introductions. So Ronin, Lights, and then Buttery last.
I actually had a pretty strong feeling on that because I felt for the amount of DPS we have in Lost Ark, we don't have anywhere near the amount of supports. If you want to like look at it this way, if you want to just go like a 50-50 split of having how the team's set up, right? For every 3 DPS, there should be 1 support because that's what's expected in a team setup. So we have 3 supports in the game right now. You got Paladin, Artist, and then you got Bard. And compared to how many DPS
To
classes.
quickly add to the equation, you can also bring up engravings and how supports don't have as many engravings as DPS do to choose from. Things of that nature. So just to add that in quickly.
That is a good point as well. And I've found it kind of interesting that people were finding ways to make classes that weren't intended as a support originally to kind of feel that way. Like you had Gunlancer running blue a lot of times. I don't think it was really designed as a support, but you had teams running that and actually pulling out some pretty good damage with it if the team was skilled enough to miss out on some of the healing aspect. So I liked how players kind of worked around it, but I think a lot of the support shortage comes from the fact there's just not a lot of differentiation between classes. Like you got Paladin, Bard, and Artist, and all three of them kind of fill a very similar role. And although they have small variances, they're not large enough to warrant only having three. Especially since you really can't customize each one. Like, oh, you can change a little bit of the skills around, but your functions you're always going to have like the same passive that kicks in. Like you really need this, or you're not applying this debuff to the opponent, you're losing out on a lot of your value. So you're always kind of running like strangled until running those few skills that would provide said bonus instead of considering maybe something else to add more stagger or this and that. And that's actually been an issue from like launch, and then before Artist even came out, it was just two. So like it was even worse then. I think everybody can agree it's better now than it used to be. I think almost everybody's got at least one support, sometimes multiple in their roster.
Yeah, but at the top end, like the top end, we're assuming 1580, right?
We can go 1560 and up.
Okay.
Actually, because kind of goes 1540 at the low end, so we can go 1540 and up, actually.
Well, I mean, I think
And
that also depends on the person because not everybody is at 1580. So you get like, I'd say if it's in their like that range of where their top character is, at
So-
least running the same content.
For context, two
Mhm.
things. One, I think that was a great point, actually, that they feel DPS classes have a lot of variety. They feel very different, whereas the supports don't. That was a great point to hold on to because we're going to let Light speak too. But for context, because I know Ronan, you quit, so they're actually nerfing Brel. So I want to agree more with Buttery there that the top end of the game would be Kyangel and Akan, only due to the fact that they're actually already talking about nerfing the gold and the raid amounts for Brel, which would imply that it's on the lower half now, if that makes sense. That most players are beyond that threshold, and I could be wrong. I wanted to throw that in there for quick context. And then if you want to quickly sum up your what you said, your statement, I thought it was really good, and then we'll let Lights take it from there. Maybe I should do like a timer on the side and let everybody have like a specific amount of time, but whatever, we'll do it for now this way.
Well, I was just more over saying like no matter where you're at, because like there's a support shortage at the low end as well as the high end. It's not just one spot.
Truth.
Especially if you go to old content and you're looking for a group of people that are learning, it's really difficult to find a support that wants to sit through it. Even overgeared.
Oh my god, Truth. Yeah.
I would even debate that there's even less interest in the lower end of content.
100% truth. Yeah, 100% truth.
That's only part of it too, because like I mean, I've said this to Evolve before, in the past. I said, I played Paladin for a while. I dropped that character. That was the most boring class I ever played. I'm not saying someone couldn't have found it more fun, but with less variation, I really only had a lot of fun on the Artist. That's why I played Artist over Paladin. So if you had more variation, maybe there would be more people who would be more willing to pick up one, saying like, "Oh, well, now I can do what I want," or have these skills that make me very mobile, and I could be more positional. But say like the utility comes from being close to the allies, so your allies can't split as much. Just things like that would be kind of interesting to see.
Okay, I love that. Lights, do you want to take it on?
Yeah. Yeah. With
It's
the
okay to
comments that they said about.
It's okay to piggyback and or reply to or add to what he said as well, because obviously you're going to hear things that you agree with, right? So
Yeah, I made some notes as he was talking. Well, first of all, with what you were saying, the changes made with the stuff they were talking about, the supports, I feel like it's gonna be vital because the difference between DPS and support is something that's honestly like making the gatekeeping even more hardcore because like another reason to why the gatekeeping is so harsh is because they want a support to join their lobby. Like, if you make a lobby, even if you're strong, but you accept some weaker guys, well, why is the support gonna pick to join your lobby when they can also join this other lobby with 3 juicers that's also looking for support? Which is making people have to be super, super over geared for content that they're playing. Not because they need to be super geared, and not even because they need to one shot the boss in 1 second, but because that's how they're going to get a support to join their lobby and not the other lobby. But as far as on the lower end having a support shortage, recently my experience really isn't that. Like, there's actually a lot of supports. There's new supports too. They just don't have very much gear. Looks like more people are making more support alts. Maybe just more players returning in general. But same thing applies though. That even if they're 1490 with not a lot of gear, they can still, even with low roster level and everything, they can still find a lobby and get into. But will it be yours? Which is why you're gonna have to really push if you're a DPS if you want to support to enter your lobby.
Yeah.
But with what they could do with the supports, like my ideas, first of all, I feel like more specialization in the roles of different classes would help. Like even making like different class synergies be a bigger role. Like I feel like it's really not like that big of a thing in this game, especially like the tiers that I've been playing in. Like nobody's really like team building, like making good proper teams based off of like synergies and supports. It's all kind of just whatever you can get is whatever you can get. I feel like if like every class, even the DPSs had like more like special synergies that did certain things. Like if they could split up the support role into multiple classes rather than just only the support, then I guess you wouldn't need the support nearly as much. But I feel like that actually wouldn't take away from the support. It just helped the game run smoother. You could have this class with that class, and then you don't need your support to be super strong. So now there can be a lower geared support, and they can still do their role, but they don't have to cover all the roles of utility and supporting. So then they can still get in the lobby. You guys can still go in and do the raid.
I
Yeah, I
really like
guess
a
I
lot of
guess
what you
that's
said.
about it.
Yeah, especially because you have the perspective of the lower end too. That was actually really good.
I was gonna can I add something to that too? Because
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it'd be great if you were willing to run out without a support to get like a maybe a boost or a slight boost of passive healing too. I think a lot of times people end up like waiting out on a support because they don't trust if they're running with pugs like what their pug is going to do, which also again leads to gatekeeping because
Yeah,
if
so that
they're accepting the people that they don't know or not quite sure, they might not be able to survive without support, or at least in the mind of the person holding the lobby. So they're like, I'm okay without support, but I don't know if this guy is.
yeah. See, that's exactly what I was thinking with the stronger synergies from the different classes. Like, for example, this class synergy with this class synergy. Maybe now you can get a shield, or maybe now you can get a little bit of healing, or like something like that that could allow like DPS classes with proper team builds to be able to basically like support the team, without needing a support to carry the entire role of utility. Because I feel like, well, what do you really get from synergy at this point right now? You get what, crit and damage. You don't really get much on the utility support end other than like a little bit of attack speed, like say mouse from Deathblade. Mostly all like attack speed and damage synergies, right? Not
Yeah,
so much like shield or passive healing or anything like that.
I'd say the biggest thing would probably just be Blue Lantern, right? That's probably going to be your biggest util, just for entropy classes, at least currently.
To add to
Yeah.
that, real quick, that was beautiful, first off. But second off, there was a mobile game I played a long time ago where specific heroes had synergies with other specific heroes, and when you put two or three of them together, they'd have their own, like the way the card sets
Hmm.
work. So what you
Yep.
said there, I gotta be honest, would be amazing to see them somehow implement. And yeah,
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 well,
because it would make every class like you would have to know your class more, and you could do a lot more with your class, and like people would actually look for like certain classes too. Oh, I play this class, I'll look for that class. Like, granted, you already do that right now. Like, at least I do, just because like I'm always needing crit synergy on all of my characters, so I look for them. But it'd be nice if like, oh, if I play this class with this class, we can't completely take over the support role and not need a support at all, but at least we can self-sustain ourselves somehow just because we have a good team.
Yeah, to the same effect, Dungeon Fighter Online used to do. It still does stuff like that. They had like a DPS class, and they had a synergy, and most groups kind of run with one DPS, a couple DPS, right, and like a synergy to boost up whatever damage that team might have. And they played a lot more in stuff like elements. So like if you had like a bunch of dark classes in one party, you'd stick them all there, and then give them a dark synergy. The synergies still do decent damage, but they're not going to be top of the board DPS because they offer so much more to the team. But that party's
Yeah.
DPS skyrockets the second they get that support that supports that archetype. But it's not just elements, but I'm saying they could do something more similar to that in Lost Ark, because I feel like the game's very, and this is a little off topic, but the game's very eccentric on the DPS board, even though there's no parsing technically allowed. A lot of people really just care about the MVP board at the end, but a lot of things goes into raids, not just damage.
Yeah, like a lot of classes I play, like if you don't have like a proper team, like synergy wise, it's going to be hard for you to MVP whether you're more geared or not, especially playing back attack or like Surge where you have all your most of your damage in one ability.
Yeah.
Buttery, would you like to add to what they said, or would you like to?
Yeah,
Jump?
I've just been making notes as you guys are going, and I didn't
When
want
Light
to
said that
interrupt.
he made notes, I'm doing it now too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
I have it up above.
same. So I've got quite a lot of strong opinions about supports and support shortage, and I always have done, right? Because you always have to look at KR, right? And if you take KR as the model example of the game, because I'll always get content prior to us, is we are always going to have a support shortage at the top end. By top end, I mean the most recent content, at least for pugs, right? I mean, I did forget as well, like Rona said, when we were doing Volt and Vikers back in the day, if we didn't get a support, we took Gun Lancer as a support because it was always Gun Lancer or support lobbies, especially for Volton and Volton Hard. I completely forgot about that. But then again, the perspective on support shortage is entirely dependent upon how you approach the game as a player. Whether it's a pug, if you're a pug player, you're a static player, or a guild. If you're in a static, like even me, I'm in the static / guild group. We have too many supports. I think we've got like 16 or 17 players, and between all of us, we've got something like 25, 30 support classes. So we're often having to, not for a con, but for some of the older raids like Gale and Clown, we're running like double support runs just because we have so many supports in our rosters across the entire guild. You know, if I didn't have a static for a con, because I'm primarily a static player, I was gonna quit after a con, just because I would not plug the game. I mean, the other thing as well is we have to think about supports and class release, right? So if you take the class release for the last year or so, when we first started the game in February last year, I think Artist had just come out a week or a couple of weeks into our life cycle of the game. So a lot of people who were playing the game back then when we had 1.3 million players was looking at Artist and KR and like, oh, that class looks so cool, and it was so highly anticipated for a year because we got it when we started playing. So in the last year, we've got Artist, Aeromancer, Slayer, Soul Eater, and the next class is going to be possibly Male Scrapper. It's not 100% whether they've scrapped the Male Scrapper in favor of something else. But I was looking at Soul Eater before she came out, like, okay, the last 3 classes we've had a support, a DPS. Soul Eater should be a support class, sort of like if anyone's played League of Legends, like Thresh, where she harvests souls and gives shield or healing. I thought that's what Soul Eater was going to be. And I was really excited for that playstyle. But then it turns out, oh, it's just another DPS class. If we get Male Scrapper in another couple of months as well, our last 5 class releases, 4 of them have been DPS. That's the other issue. We're not getting engravings released for classes that are support engraving. So for Solia, they had the perfect opportunity to release her with a damage engraving and a support engraving, and then balance that around the other class engravings. Because this is the problem with supports. You always have a support engraving and a DPS engraving, but the DPS engraving is completely dog shit. So you can't play DPS on supports. So we need class engravings, or at least future class releases, to fill this gap of having a DPS engraving and a support engraving. Because in the long run, we're always going to have a support shortage if we get 3 or 4 to 5 classes released in a year or year and a half, and more than half of them are going to be DPS. If more than half of them are DPS, we're always going to have a support shortage. So they need to think about the balance of classes and the release cadence, that if they're releasing like they have done for this year, Slayer in December, solely they got that June, July. So they've released 2 classes in a year, and they've both been DPS. So in a year they've released Aeromancer, Slayer, and Solia, and all 3 of them have been DPS. That's the problem.
That's
why we're always going to have a support shortage.
Because in MOBAs they don't do it like that. They try to release supports.
Here's my perfect example, right? Not to compare the two, but World of Warcraft, right? In World of Warcraft, you have talent specs. So I always played a Druid class. Druid was my main for the longest time before I switched to Warrior. And Druid was the best class overall because it had 4 specs, 2 DPS, 1 healing, and 1 tank. Why can't we do something similar with Graving, where if a class is supposed to be a DPS class, release them with a DPS engraving, but also offer the alternative route of a support engraving for that class as well? Like, I thought Solia was 100% gonna be a support class, like Thresh from League of Legends. That would have been such a sick concept for a support class. You reap the souls, and you heal and shield.
That's a really fair point, because I come back to you play games like World of Warcraft back in the day. You go back to Rift the same way. Every single base class had a support. They had a support route and a tank route, and then whatever they were traditionally designed for. Like Rogue could be a dodge tank, or they could be a support buff people instead of healing. Same with Cleric. They had a DPS spec that was not just healing, right? So they had a DPS spec and they could heal tank. So every single class, every baseborn class always had a way to do everything, and it was a great system. It's one of the few things Rift actually had was an amazing class balance.
Okay, so I've just Googled this. How many classes are there in Lost Ark, right? Because I didn't know the exact number.
25 or something.
Yeah, we have 24, and now we're solely at 25. So we have 25 classes, right? 2 engravings per class. That's 50 engravings, of which 3%, 3 of those engravings are support engravings, not including on-land. So we're just talking about Paladin, Bard, and Artist. 3 are support engravings out of 50.
It's a crazy good point.
Yeah, not even 10%. Not even 10% of the engravings in the entire game are support engraving. That's such a big issue.
And then on top of that, they technically they do have more, but they're dog shit. Like no one would ever run it because they're things that don't help all that much.
There was Deathblade support January, November
No,
last year.
But what you're saying is still 100% true. The only true 3, because you should still count Gunlanta, because combat readiness is kind of pretty good for the team, but the only true 3 that help the team, you're right. It's Full Bloom, Desperate Salvation, and Holy War. You're 1,000,000% right with that, actually. That's a really good point that it's 3 to 47. That's crazy out of ratio. Crazy out of ratio. They shouldn't even be making male scrapper. They should be making another support. You're so right about this.
Theoretically, Solia should have been a support.
I like what you said with that too, the concept of her doing damage, build all right, you know how perfect suppression is a balance, right? It would have been sick to see her scrapper to do damage to get some heals, and then the second phase of her flip would be to heal the team. That's actually such a beautiful concept. It's not even funny. That would have been so dope.
Thresh from League of Legends. It's basically Thresh from League of Legends.
I love it. Actually, that's huge. That was really good.
I was so hyped for Solia, and then it's it's just another DPS class. I mean, it does look really cool, but
Why
not as
don't
cool as it could have been.
Why don't we leave it on that note? Lights, do you want to say anything to what he had just said before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, we could basically just leave it at that. I mean, I agree that first of all, the amount of DPS to support the ratio is just off. I mean, you need a better ratio than that.
Yeah.
But a lot of these classes and their kits, and based off of how the raids actually play, I'm not sure how well classes with different specs would really work. Like it, I feel like you either got to do a lot of damage or you got to support. Yeah, it'd be rough to like. I feel like people wouldn't be taking you if like you'd basically be the guy at the bottom of the barrel. Oh, we can't find a support, so we're gonna go ahead and just take this guy that's gonna do less damage and support.
Yeah.
Versus, I'd rather just take this Slayer that's gonna skip mechanics, and then I'll also take this
We'll call
Bard.
that
Then we
class a
won't have to
hybrid.
worry about neither of them. You know? Yeah, like
We'll call it
hybrid
a
classes
hybrid.
in this game. I'm really not sure how well they would do. Like if it was introduced from the beginning like that, and every class was like kind of hybrid. I feel like even then everybody would just migrate to
I mean,
the
they are going to
DPS
be working
classes.
on it, right? They've
What if you
mentioned
had
in
multiple
KR that they
hybrids too?
want 3 engravings, right?
What if you had multiple hybrids too?
I couldn't. Yeah, if you
Like two
had like
DPS,
multiple
two
hybrids, you
hybrids.
know, like you'd be able to make different team comps, obviously, but just because of the way like raids work in this game, like okay, you have this much HP, you push to this HP bar, and then you go to the mechanic. So then automatically it becomes crucial. Oh well, can we push to skip mechanics or not? And then if you can push to skip mechanics, what's gonna stop me from just playing a character that's gonna make it way easier for me to just skip mechanics than to play a character that's gonna have to play through the mechanics and then get heals? Well, yeah, it's going to be easier for me to play the mechanics if I can do damage and get heals, but it's going to be actually even easier if I can just skip the mechanic in general, especially in a game where like it's kind of dominated by either pay to win or RMT. Um, I feel like at the end of the day, even if you're an F2P player and you have the choice, am I going to pick this guy that's going to burst through the mechanics, or am I going to pick this guy that's gonna do less damage, but he's gonna do less damage than a main DPS, and he's gonna heal less than a support? Why would I pick him?
No,
I would
100%.
I would
And
only pick him if I had to.
we're
I
definitely
guess
gonna stop. We should stop on that because we're branching into now raid design, which could be a whole different topic. Like that was good. Like you guys covered. Like I can't even believe what I just heard. If you want to, you can definitely respond to it. But I feel like we should move on to the next one because that opens the door for way more questions. That's all I'm saying. It's up to you guys.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
had
yeah,
one. I guess I had one more thing to add. I think more of what he was trying to get at is if they designed a class to be like both, it doesn't have to be like a trade. So if you want to play support, you have the other class engraving to do support, where it's really good at supporting. It doesn't have to be like a hybrid damage thing. You could just swap over to pure utility with that
yeah,
other like, class. That
yeah.
that would fix a lot of I think the issue instead of doing like a halfway mark.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of that point too. It's just like with the kits on what was it like over 70% of these characters. I don't see how those kits could be support kits because like it's like if you guys played League of Legends, like half of these characters are all Zed. How do you make Zed support?
Yeah, I mean, I could also say like
What kind of
maybe.
engravings can make Zed supportive?
Well, I'm not necessarily saying like every class needs that extra route, right? But like maybe some where it makes sense. Like he said, kind of like maybe Soul Eater, or
Gun
what
Lancer.
if you had, yeah, where you can kind of see it coming because it's like, oh, I could see that, and it fits kind of with the lore a little
I mean,
bit.
to end on the topic of support shortage, we're always going to have a support shortage. Like, my main point is we're always going to have a support shortage if 95% of our engravings in the game are DPS engravings.
Yeah, that's true. And that's kind of what I was getting at when I first started. Is I feel like there was a lot of differentiation between classes. I feel like there needs to, just like we have 6 classes for fighter that do different things. We need more for support. It doesn't
Yeah.
always have to be the same debuffs or the same idea of utility. It could be a completely different playstyle.
Yeah, it just comes down to the main problem in the first place that you stated, just the DPS to support ratio in general. There'd be more support engravings if there was more supports, but once again, out of all of our classes, we only got 3, so
No.
can't do much about that.
Keeping the
Like, I
train
mean,
on
yeah.
track. I mean, I guess we could do a whole video on supports, which is insane. But keeping the train on track. Why don't we move on to the next subject? Is that okay? All right. So
Yep,
like,
yep.
Yeah, I've beat the support shortage to death.
so next up, I guess, would be entropy changes and the solutions to it. So just again, a little bit of context is what I'm going to offer to everybody to start the conversation, which is essentially for Ronan, who hasn't been here for this, what they're doing is they're actually removing entropy sets from the game. They didn't confirm that they're removing Ambush Master from the game, but what they're trying to essentially do and what they're trying to cover here, the concept is they want to, and Saint kind of said it best, is they want to raise the floor, so allow players that aren't as good to be able to somewhat be rewarded for not being as good, still kind of compete with the average player damages, but then not take away from the highly skilled players at the top end who are playing positional characters who can really milk it and get the most damage out of it. So with that being said, what they're doing again is they're removing entropy. They haven't confirmed they're removing Ambush Master or Master Brawler though. Do you, I guess, think these are good changes? Do you think there's better solutions to this? Currently, at the moment, do you think that they'll compensate us for the people who are already built, very well built, or spent a ton of time and gold or money into building their entropy characters? And again, we'll
Uh,
start with Ronan.
no and no to both points. I think it's a terrible change, actually. I, I
I
I'm
agree,
fitting.
just saying.
No, I fit right along down the line because I mostly played. I had a single class, which was Arcana, that was not oriented for back at front attack. Every other class I've ever made, as far as DPS goes, was a back attack class or a front attacker. Because I made a Hammer Boy too. So I'm used to that. Positionals have always been a thing in RPGs, or at least in a lot of them. And I positionals adds another element to the game. I don't think it's right to remove something that's a very core. The game has taught us to do this from day one. Like this is how you play if you're playing the style class, or you can do if you don't
Keyword
like that.
core.
Yeah, this is a very integral part to the game. Now, the problem is that they can't take away from entropy and then claim they don't want to take away from the higher end because the higher end typically end up playing entropy. But you know what? One of the best TPS in the game isn't even an entropy class. So as far as numbers, raw numbers goes at the top end. So you can't even all that confirm that entropy is so much better than the other anyways. Especially when it's different style of damage. You might see bigger numbers of entropy bits because they tend to be bursts. And I've kind of put this before. If you had your character all maxed out, level 10 gems, the sustain classes tend to catch up a lot more to the bursty entropy classes, which you kind of notice earlier on through the fight when they do their big hits and the fight's short. You notice that number being high because the fight didn't last that long and they got their big hits out before it died. Especially if you're going to skip, which a lot of people go to skip mechanics these days if they're overgeared. No one wants to do clown with consistent damage because they might not skip mechanics, where the fight might end in 30 seconds if you're using all burst.
To add a notation there, because you covered the top end, the raising the or not decreasing the ceiling for them. They wanted to make sure that the floor for players that are average or couldn't always get to their position to get damage would still be rewarded, because they're basically saying that a player that's just not, I'm gonna say a sucky player straight up, but like a sucky player I guess would basically never make the board because it was unfair for them because they could never get into a position to the proper positions because they were positionals, making it that a average or below average player would have a better time playing a Hitmaster class. So I just wanted to add that quickly in for you to talk about as well.
I guess I would add into that if you're just talking about as far as removing because I think it's bad design, it's not. Because it's rewarding a different playstyle. If you don't like said playstyle, there's plenty of classes that still can compete in damage with entropy classes. Arcana is considered one of the best DPS in the game. Hitmaster class. Sorks as well. Hitmaster class
Summoner.
also top end. Summoner as well. To say that entropy like reign king, even if they're extremely good, even if you put two extremely skilled players, there's so much more that goes into a fight than just being on his butt. Things can happen. Boss could turn. It has nothing to do with you. AI function, or maybe one of your hitmaster classes doesn't know how the aggro table works and is standing on the back too, and the boss keeps turning. That happens a lot too. As an entry player, I see that happen all the time. So, to me, to remove it is to remove something that's been very integral for a lot of classes from the start, and especially because it's gonna, it's like you said, you have ambush master, master brawler. You have a lot of core aspects that base on it, not just doing entropy. You have a lot more than just that. And I think if they're going to do something similar to this, then they need to make playstyles different than instead of A and B. You need to have a bunch of different ways of doing damage, not just front and back attacks or hitmaster. But that's the big differentiator between two DPS styles right now in the game. But there's not that, like, oh, I do element damage compared to this dude doing physical. They need to add a whole new element to the game if they're going to remove it, in my opinion.
Question for you, Ronan. What was the most recent Legion raid that you did?
The last one, the one right before the monkey. That was my last one I played before I was.
Bro shelter.
Oh wait, Legion raid. Yeah. No. I was doing up to Kyangel, so before that it would have been Brelhard.
Okay.
I haven't done a con because that was launched after, or well, rather during my ban.
Okay, so why don't we follow into lights next? That was actually really good, and you kind of blew my mind with a couple of concepts there. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay, so first of all, I gotta say first, my opinion on this isn't gonna be too accurate because I'm only up to Brel. I haven't played Kyangil. I don't know what the mechanics are like in a con. I don't know what it's gonna be like in a Thaymine. But just from my experience playing pretty much everything before then, uh, I, I'm assuming that the reason why they're changing entropy is because of the later content. Like for example, in the beginning, back attack was really good, right? Because it was easy to back attack, and not even just easy, but like the bosses that you would fight against were basically designed to be able to use back attack against. But as you continue playing these fights, it gets more and more complicated. Like you have to know the boss very well in order to do the same damage that you're doing before. Not because of gear or anything, but simply just because of boss patterns. Like for example, recently I've been doing a lot of clowns, and just depending on what clown decides to do that time, what mechanics he ends up running, I can either do tons of damage or no damage. Completely not because of skill. If I played the same raid 10 times, depending on what mechanics the boss does in what order, I will, if I graph out the damages, I will do a whole bunch of different amounts. Like sometimes I'll do tons of damage and then sometimes I'll do less damage. Sometimes I'll do no damage. And that all just depends on what the boss decides to do. And that's just in clown. And just from what I'm hearing, I'm not actually sure. It just gets worse and worse for a con, and then uh, potentially Thaymine, because bosses are starting to do all kinds of things, and there's not really windows for you to back attack like before. And like say I'm playing Surge and I need to stack up before I back attack. Well, if I don't stack up in that one window that I have, that this very slim window for a chance of back attack, well, I'm gonna lose out so much damage throughout the entire raid compared to a Hitmaster class that can just continue to do their max damage the whole entire time.
Ooh,
So
good point.
if the bosses are going to keep having these mechanics and patterns where you don't have the windows, because the whole point of playing Entropy is you know the raid well enough that you know all of the little windows where you can get your damage in. And because you're playing Entropy, you can make up for the damage that the other static classes are doing in those windows. But the thing is, as these raids keep changing, those windows keep getting smaller and smaller, and then depending on certain boss patterns, they don't even exist. So how's it going to feel to play an entropy class fully geared, but you don't even have the opportunity to do damage, and it's completely out of your control, unless you like restart the fight and hope that he plays out different patterns this time. So hopefully this time you can do damage. Like the best example I can think of right now, just from the content that I've been playing, is where like say you start Clown Gate 3, and right when you come in, he goes invulnerable and starts jumping around under the ground. And then when he comes up, he decides to be against the wall in the flames. And then he spawns his orbs against the wall in the flames. Well, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go stand in the flames so you can back attack him. And what if he just decides to stay in there and then just keep going invulnerable? Well, if he keeps going invulnerable, then my stacks are gonna run out. And by the time my stacks run out, a back attack case hasn't occurred. So I still haven't even had a window to do my back attack. But if I don't back attack on a class that's completely based off of crit damage in one ability on a back attack, well, how am I gonna do damage? I can't. I can't do damage, and it has everything to do with what the boss is doing. And if the bosses in the future are going to be even worse in this case, well, I'm not surprised they're removing entropy, because you could be completely overgearing another static class, but the static class is going to out damage you greatly just because it doesn't matter what the boss is doing. I'm still doing my full ceiling damage the whole time. It may be way less than your full ceiling damage, but you never even have a chance to do your full ceiling damage, so what does it matter?
True. I would like to add something because I didn't really offer a solution either. So like I guess if people are still having issues with entropy, I think I'm never a fan of them ripping away options that we currently have and not replacing things. That's what Diablo has done. It's what Destiny's done a lot. They remove old content and don't really add a lot to replace it. So I think rather maybe the better solution isn't to remove entropy altogether, but make it an optional thing. To where maybe if your class is very back attack oriented, maybe you have a better option if you don't want to play that style to have a hitmaster class, kind of like they did with demonic impulse and perfect suppression. But maybe you don't have to switch classes. Maybe you could just switch your skills around to better orient for hitmaster.
Yeah, solutions wise, I'm not sure what they will end up going with, but I'm actually pretty positive that whatever they do end up going with, it'll be better than what Entropy was. Um, so I'm really not even worried about it at all, even though I'm an Entropy player, because like I see the problems with Entropy, and if they're gonna fix it, then it's gonna make my class better. Whether they go with the route where that I've seen people talking about how like uh, specific sets for specific classes, that would be really good, because that would make every specific entropy class like way more effective. But even if they don't, they just do something like say you do hit a front attack or a side attack, well, you don't lose nearly as much damage. That was another thing that I saw people talking about, and that would even it out. But it would still just feels bad, man, because you just be losing damage down to the AI. Like I'm fine with it being a skill cap issue, to where if you know the fight very well, then you can know all of your little windows and play perfectly, and be able to utilize your entropy. But it's just when the skill cap isn't even the issue, and it's just coming down to RNG. Like there's enough RNG in this game to even have to go down to RNG in the boss fight to see if I get to do damage today.
I want to let Buttery attack this next, but I just want to say to what you said. I respect you so much for having that faith in the game and saying that whatever they're doing to it, I know it's going to make my class better. When you said that, I got tingles. Like, that was so. I love how much you trust and have faith in these developers. And if they ever get a chance to watch this, I hope the fuck that they do right by you, because, God, that was such a great way to say that. And you said it so naturally. I don't
Well,
want to.
I feel like they don't have any other choice. Like they're choosing to not. They've already decided we are not going to change the way the boss's mechanics and patterns are going. So then, therefore, we definitely have to do something about back attack, because everyone that's playing back attack is going to get
Just
pissed.
your
If I'm
faith. It was just your faith. That's all. I want to
yeah.
let Butter attack it, but I can't. Like, your level of trust was beautiful. That's all.
Okay.
It really was, dude. Go ahead, gaming. I mean, I'm sorry, not game. Well, yeah, gaming works too. Buttery gaming. Yeah. Go ahead, Buttery.
Just before I start my main point, just to tack on to what Light said at the end there about them making raids not back attack friendly. is they are, but they're doing it for content that's fucking old. Like they're changing Belshazzar, they're changing Kai Gale Gate 2. They're making it easier for back attackers. Too little, too late.
Exactly.
They need to make these raids that going into it suitable for back attackers. So to start my main point, I don't think I can offer a proper opinion on this, is because I think Ronan and Light, you do play back attack classes, where I've exclusively for the entire time of Lost Ark only really played Hitmaster classes. I've tried back attack classes and they just do not work for me. I do enjoy my Scrapper, but she's so low level I just kind of mess around and like I've not really taken her that high. I think in terms of removing entropy and raising the floor, it's good, I guess, because like I think Zeal said it with Slayer. If you don't play entropy on Slayer, you're basically trolling. If you're so pigeonholed with your class that if you're not playing a specific set, then it's not good for player agency in terms of how they want to choose to play their character. Whereas if you look at a class like Shadowhunter, you can play two different specs. You can play I think is it Swift Crit Hallucination or
Spec Swift.
sorry, Spec Swift or Spec Crit Hallucination and Salvation, depending on which one it is.
Yeah.
They have multiple options for their build depending on what they want to do and how they want to play. Whereas if you look at a newer class like Slayer,
hold on.
Zeus is basically saying if you're not playing Entropy on that class, you're basically trolling because you're so pigeonholed to play Entropy, because in this day and age of gaming, we are so pigeonholed of doing the maximum amount of damage and becoming the most efficient players that if you're not playing Entropy, it is basically trolling. Sorry, go on.
I did want to add into that point too, because people tend to follow the meta, like where it goes. So part of that is also going to be on like what the players do. Because currently there are a lot of classes that don't have to play entropy, but people play them because that's what Saint said to do, or that's what this dude said to do on YouTube. And that's kind of more of a community thing. But I don't feel like entropy is the end all be all, except for maybe a few classes that are really designed around it. Something like Reaper, who is pretty much excluded to it, and things like Slayer, who's also very, very back attack oriented. But things like Perfect Suppression, for example, can be played in Entropy with Swiftness. It actually can pull even more damage on paper.
I don't even think there's a meta in this game. There's just a spec is clearly better than another spec.
Yeah.
And that's like 90% of the time, that is the spec. The spec engraving is always better than the Swift engraving. Like, always. Swift has always been, if you want to do consistent damage. Spec has always been, do you want to do big damage? And I think raising the floor of certain classes will help with this, because ultimately the goal with removing entropy is to get these back attack classes into the upper tiers if there was a meta with the spec classes, because most of these back attack classes, barring I think Slayer and Deathblade, their primary spec is like Swift thing. Like Scrapper, their main spec or their meta spec is the Swift version instead of the spec version. There's not many people playing Scrapper green build anymore.
Shock training.
Yeah, shock training. There's not many people playing shock training. Everyone's playing Pi, which is a Swift build.
I will say a lot of the spec classes do seem oriented around back attack if the options available, but mostly because of how spec works with crit if you can build it high enough.
I mean, the other thing is repositioning. Many of the back attack classes don't have that great repositioning. The only two that I can really think of off the top is Deathblade has insane repositioning with Dark Axle, which is the most insane skill ever. And then you have Scrapper, who has a double spacebar, and then their movement skill, Charging Blow, is on like a 3 to 4 or it's solo. It's like 4 or 5 second cooldown just to reposition. It's so big, and they have double spacebar, which is also on like just a short cooldown.
I probably actually have a little bit of a biased opinion on this because most of the classes I played were Swift based positioning classes that were like Swiftness entropy. Like I played High Scrapper, I play Reaper. That's that's a 50
Yeah.
split.
So it's
I
okay
play
to have
Shadow
bias
Hunter.
here because together you make a full picture, right? So
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I
I
have no
get it.
bias because I play
have the
Hitmaster.
yeah. He plays Hitmaster. You play the Swift spec, but I play the spec crit. So you have the maneuverability with a little bit less damage. But I my whole roster is a very slow moving class, but I'll hit like a truck if you let me back attack.
No, I get it.
If
That's kind of
you
what I
let
was.
me back attack.
Yeah, if you allow me to back attack today.
And that's where the
I
issue
think
arises. Where if we look at the
Exactly.
most recent content, Iron Gale, Gate 2, I play Hitmaster classes. Gate 2, even Gate 1, when the bird flies around, and Gate 2, primarily all of his mechanics, he moves around so much. Even as a Hitmaster class, I play Ignite Assault. It is still hard a month and a half into it, probably even longer for Iron Gale, sorry, to actually hit Doomsdays because he just does move so much. You have to pick your spots to Doomsday. With
Yeah.
back attack classes, that's even worse. In my stack, we've got a gunslinger who's trying to line up his shots, and they're just moving all. The boss is just moving all the time. And now, after Kleingale's been in their version of the game a year, and our game a couple of months, now it's getting nerfed. Like too little, too late.
Yeah, that's true. I will say too, even even like like another solution could be like adding like an indicator to like if the boss is going to make a drastic movement, maybe add an indicator like a second before it happens or something. So maybe if you're charging something, you
like
can
a
kind
yellow
of
exclamation point.
yeah, like maybe like an arrow pointing, like a yellow arrow pointing where he's going to be facing next, or like what direction he's going to go.
Well, just quick. There's a few things to say. One, Buttery, remember that you have to do a solution as well in a second. But
Well, I've got two things to add on.
I was just going to say to that though, Ronan, it gets to a degree though where you're just making the game too easy for people, and that's where I have a problem with that. A flashing indicator that says "boss going to do drastic move" or something like those old school arcade machines, fine, but giving them an actual directional, now we're just babysitting people.
Well, I
guess.
mean,
I mean,
I'm
just to
giving
compare
an
it for a
example.
second, right? If we look at WoW and Lost Ark, right? So in WoW, the one that comes to mind at the moment is I don't know if anyone out there or maybe you guys here know, Castle Nathria. There was a boss called I think Sludge Fist, who like all the bosses in WoW, they just attack you. They don't really have many basic patterns like in Lost Ark, and then they have mechanic patterns in WoW like we have in Lost Ark. But the mechanic patterns, it's pretty evident when they're going to move and when stuff is going to happen. But most of that is primarily due to mods. And I don't know why they can't add stuff into Lost Ark like, oh, the boss is going to move here or there. That would be good to
RuneScape has
have.
that same concept.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they actively go against mods in Lost Ark. They don't like.
Yeah, I know.
I think part of what we all
It's
fell
about
in
raid
love
design.
with this game was the difficulty. If I'm going to be honest, I can't speak for everyone here, but I think I can. In that is that part of what we all fell in love with was that level of skill that it takes to do certain things in the raids.
Yeah, I can agree.
Maybe, but it's kind of a double-edged sword too, because then like when you're trying to
100%.
play content, yeah.
Yeah,
Just
I
to
would
finish up,
agree.
sorry, go on, man.
I would agree with that completely because that was the fun with Entropy for me because like just the skill cap ceiling. If you don't know the fight very well, you're not going to be able to do very much damage. But if you know the fight very very well, you can fully utilize your Entropy. Just with enough skill and knowing everything that the boss does. That's why it just sucks to see that be taken away with the changes of future fights, not even allowing you to utilize that.
That's true too, because entropy it's very important to know the fight, not just because you need to know where to stand, but you need to know when you need to greed and when you can't.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just to finish on my point. In terms of compensation, I can definitely see some compensation, but more being in the refund of engraving books, like oh wait, no, they're not removing Ambush Master. So in terms of refund for the set, that's such a hard one Because I don't know what you could refund. Maybe the cost that it was to craft the set.
Well, especially because you bought jewelry too. Well, no, but it goes
Yeah.
beyond that. It does go
I don't
beyond
know
that.
how you can compensate for that, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
if you make
I
your
don't-
entire build for a specific set that gives specific stats, and then now you have to change sets, well, you have to change build. How do you compensate that?
And in the
See, I-
past, they didn't compensate Korea when they did full changes to their characters or classes. If you remember, there was a video a long time ago. Zales talked about how he had to spend ridiculous amounts of gold to rebuild a character. So they may not. There may be some medial compensation that they give us.
I don't. I was gonna say I don't think they'll do compensation, but what I think they'll do is they'll make entropy will probably still be a thing, but it's gonna do something different. It's gonna function in some different way. And what they'll probably do is that what they need to do is make sure that that change isn't detrimental. Like it needs to be meta, like good in the meta. Because if they don't, you're gonna have a massive backlash from the players that played entropy. Because they're going to feel like we didn't get compensated for this. I have to rebuild my character. I have to completely change how I play. And like good example, like look at Sharpshooter when they changed Sharpshooter. Like you had to rebuild that whole character, and they didn't do anything to help those guys really.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I mean, finally, just to like as a solution, I think it's fine that they're removing entropy, but they have to put the damage elsewhere, like into the back attacker's kit, like whether that's increasing damage or removing the fact that it needs to back attack to hit. I don't know what they can do, but overall, they just should, as a solution, they should make the back attack classes get rewarded more than they currently do for back attacking. If they're removing entropy.
okay.
I know that's a weird thing to say too, because for a long time people just kind of like held it up on a pedestal. But it is the light was right. When you miss that hit, it sucks. Even on the swiftness classes, I played more of the swiftness. Even if missing one was a big damage loss, even though I'm hitting more often.
Yeah, I agree.
So I wanted to just add one thing, and then I was going to move
Yeah.
on to the next topic. I wanted to say lights. You know, you said something. Everyone said things that I didn't even think of. Like my mind's actually blown. But you said something about Hitmaster versus positional versus non-positional that really kind of stuck with me through this, and that's why I made notes on it. Was the synergy aspect that a lot of identities really do need. You know, like you build up your identity with Slayer, and then you don't get that back attack window, and then you have to rebuild your identity again. And I didn't really think about it until you said it, but like that's actually a bigger problem than even the damage, all the other stuff that we're talking about in a sense. And I'm not trying to undermine any other points. I'm trying to say that that's a really good point. That Hitmaster class like Sork can constantly kind of build their meter because they don't have to worry about positioning then building meter. Whereas a person who has to kind of get those back attacks in, they could potentially be really punished, and not punished for just 10, 20 seconds, 30-second one rotation. They could potentially be punished because of the way the raid design is for the entire raid. Like it could set off their a whole chain effect for the rest of the raid where nothing kind of lines up right. And I just
Yeah,
go ahead.
it's like it's literally even at just my eye level that can easily be over 100 million DPS loss.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing you can do about it. You just lost that cycle. So now
Yeah.
for the entire raid, you just lost an entire cycle worth of damage,
Think,
and now you got to start over again.
think
And then
about
who knows if who knows if the next pattern is going to line up for you or not? It's probably not going to if we're talking about the later raids. But once again, I haven't actually played them. I'm just assuming what it's going to be just based off of what I've heard. And for example, what he said earlier with Kyngel Gate 2, if Hitmaster is having issues landing, I can only imagine what back attack can do. Like, and the other thing that sucks is what back attack has to end up doing a lot of the time is, oh, these mechanics aren't in my favor. Well, now I just have to hold on to my damage. I can't unload right now, so I'm basically gonna do nothing. I'm playing Soul Fist. I'm waiting for my hype, so I'm basically just walking around waiting. But you just how much time are you just gonna keep walking around waiting? Like for example, Slayer. And the time that takes me to walk around and wait to burst, I could have bursted twice. I could have done twice as much damage.
I mean, as a solution to that, right? I'm just thinking as you're talking, right? Take Deathblade, for example, right? And losing cycles. It takes 20 stacks to build up your Surge Zero, as it's called now. And you can just lose that if a boss is doing a pattern, like entirely lose that. So I'd like to see for like Deathblade, for example, is if the stacks were removed, but then take a bit of the damage off the surge, it'd be a lot easier to get more consistent surges, right? But then you'd also wouldn't have to hold your DPS as much because you need less stacks to hit the surge.
Well,
Like
I don't agree with that as a Deathblade player
Let's-
because there's ways you
Well,
can
let's stop on
deal
that,
with
though.
that with the kit.
Let's stop on that because I was thinking about bringing up Robust Spirit, and I'm not going to actually because I think that again we left it on an open. That's a good place to end on that topic.
Okay.
You think about it, right? Because it's perfect. Like there's so many. Everybody that watches this now has a way to also spread into that and add to that. I think. Are you guys okay with that? If we move
Yeah,
Yep.
fine.
Yep.
Okay. So the next one, I changed it while we were having the discussion because this is such a good discussion that I wanted to take us out of that class. Because the next point that I had was something that would have led us down the same trail. So instead, I changed it to the Jumpstart servers. So we're going to talk about the Jumpstart servers. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add some context for Ronan and for everybody. So essentially what the Jumpstart servers are is it's servers that are going to be on every region, one per region. They're going to be separated from the player pool and player-based matchmaking. From the original servers, eventually to be merged in with the current servers. And what it's supposed to do, Ronan, is it's supposed to allow for not only newer players, but maybe even returning players or existing players to jump on these new start servers, experience a boosted version of the game where we're going to get accelerated very quickly. And the goal is to basically have gatekeeping be less of an issue. And I think have the game be more fun for the people in that kind of range and even at the top range. And I think that kind of covers it. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Not as their point, but that I missed, like what the Jumpstart servers are trying to accomplish.
No, not really.
No, I think that's basically it.
Okay, so go ahead, Ronan. You can take it on that. If you don't know much
So-
about them, that's totally fine. Just ask questions at any point. But it's kind of similar to the BDO thing where they.
No, I did. I was looking at the patch notes and stuff. I've kept up with the game a little bit since I've left. I just haven't like super in depth like patch note dive. You know, I read like some of the roadmap. I even watched a couple videos here and there. But I did want to say I like to kind of make these more of a discussion when I'm doing like my side of stuff because sometimes there might be something I'm like, oh, I'm kind of like missing the point of what they're intending with it. So feel free to jump in or interrupt
Maybe
us.
having you go first might have been a mistake, actually.
No, it's sorry. But I'm just saying, like, if we treat it more instead of like a forum, like more of like an open panel, that's fine too.
I mean, I can go first if you want.
Yeah, I was thinking, why don't we swap
no,
that?
I'm-
We'll flip backwards. No, it's actually a good idea because then you have things to add to what they say. And why I actually invited you here today, everyone here is intelligent. Why I invited you wasn't just that you would quit and have that perspective, was that because every time we've ever spoken, you have a really good way of adding, without knowing something about something, you still understand something. You have a really good insight. So why don't we do that? That's something that I totally oversaw or missed. I totally missed that concept here. So we're gonna flip the script. Lights will still be second, but we're gonna go buttery, and then you'll go last runner instead. I actually think that'll have more value.
Okay. I did just have one question on it
Yeah.
though. I'm kind of wondering why they haven't done something similar to this first because this
Sooner?
has been a complaint. Yeah, because this has been a complaint since like day one of Lost Ark. So I don't know
Yeah.
why this wasn't addressed like way sooner.
One of the other topics on here that we're probably not going to get to was Gold River himself, and we could just use him as the explanation for this, that they lacked leadership and vision and direction. And without getting into that, we'll go with the point, but I hope that helps and answers a little bit of what you've said.
Yeah, no, it was just like an open-ended thing. It was just
So go ahead, Buttery. Take it away.
So yeah, no, I agree with Ronan. Like, why wasn't this not done sooner? Is the primary point. Like, this should have been way sooner than it has been. Primarily because I think last time I checked, we were actually going up in amount of players. I think we were at 35k, and then we've jumped to like 40k average now. Is problem with Jumpstart servers, is it too little too late in the fact that we are not going to get a major influx of new players from this? It'll be primarily returning players that haven't had chance to do Rel or Kyengale because they quit at Clown or for other games at the time. I mean, the other thing as well is Jumpstart servers. How long is it going to be before they implement them to the rest of the the rest of the servers. Because if you say that the Jumpstart servers are going to last for 6 months, then integrate, the problem with that is how many people are actually just going to try the Jumpstart servers, get a 1580 character, try out a con, and then quit to go play something else. The longevity of the Jumpstart servers is what concerns me the most. Is are there still going to be in 2 months' time enough players playing on the Jumpstart servers to actually form parties, to actually make groups for 8-player content, probably 4-player content, maybe, but 8-player content, they're going to suffer the same thing that we are suffering, and that is the support shortage, and the other issues that we're struggling with. I mean, the first point as well, the main point as well is this will be great for the chaos streamers like Saint and them, because they can make a character and play with people, because the primary issue for chaos streamers is they do not have the time, because content on KR takes so long. They do not have the time to make characters on other servers. So these Jumpstart servers are great for them because they can make community events and make things to play with other people on different regions. So it'll be great for them and great for community. But in the long run, if it takes too long to filter these players into the main core servers, will the Jumpstart servers, characters and accounts and the base just be completely dead by the time that happens? If so, we're just funneling in dead accounts and dead characters into already dead regions. That's my main point.
Yeah, based
That was
off of that, I
beautiful.
feel like literally the most important piece of information that should have been released at the same time the Jumpstart service was even released is just the integration, the merge and integration of like are these characters going to be transferred, and where are they going to be transferred to? Like, if you don't know that, like, say you're a returning player, well, why am I going to make a character on a Jumpstart server when my buddies, they play on this server? Well, what entices me to go over there? Yeah, I can get the 1580 and I can play content, but if I can't play with my friends, what's the point? Like, as a new returning player, like it honestly, it doesn't look enticing to me at all. Like, maybe if I was able to see like where it was going to go to after it was integrated, then I would think about it. But like, just looking at a Jumpstart server where I have to start, play the same game, go through the same issues, just on a different server with less players, I don't know. It doesn't.
All the horizontal content again.
Yeah, it doesn't pull me in any way. I didn't even think about doing it once.
So, can I ask a question? Would that actually be your piece on it already?
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
Yeah.
because this was so quick, I just wanted to say something fast that I took notes on. Because of what Buttery said, actually, is there's a really good point to that. And to both of what you said. One, why would you make one there? Two, there would be a support shortage, like you pointed out. But in addition to that, I actually think the support shortage would be worse, because what I wrote in my notes was, I don't think anybody who's going on a Jumpstart is going to make a support. They're doing it to probably make a damage character. So I actually think it would be worse, because how many people do you think are going to go over to those servers to make a support, right?
Yeah, you even have the same issue on an even smaller pool, so an even worse issue.
We'll see how that
I
goes.
don't know.
Sorry to interrupt, but I've just clocked this as we were talking. The other thing is content, and doing content on the Jumpstart servers is going to be even harder than when we did it, because you don't have cards, you don't have gems, you don't have skill points, you have all this extra horizontal content to do. So you're going to go into 1490 Brawl, Gate 1, Gate 2 with green gems, green runes, and then you're going to also have like level 5, not even level 7 gems. And then you're not even going to have Lostwing Cliff 12 or LOS 12 or 18. You're going to be struggling so much that the raids are going to be that much harder, even for normal content.
Fucking
With a whole
great
bunch of
point.
players with no experience.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
fucking great.
Sounds like hell, dude.
No,
I'm good.
that was
I'm
beautiful.
gonna pass.
I'm still gonna do it, but go. All right,
It does
Ronan.
sound like
After all
hell.
of that, no, that was fucking awesome. Like, wow, Ronan, you're up though, and you have some great information there to work with. If I'm being honest.
Well, from what I'm feeling that the developers are adding this for is they want people to be able to learn without like the gatekeeping, without the hardcore like learn to do the raid before applying kind of thing. and they want more learning groups to kind of start. At least that's how I feel. That's general consensus, right?
Now, do you
I mean,
think
it's
though?
a Western exclusive. Well, they're not getting this in Korea, right? They're not getting Jumpstart servers in Korea. It's only for Western players.
Now, do you think though what Ronan just said though? Do you think that gatekeeping, that level of elitism, won't exist on these servers? Because I know a lot of people who are going to make other characters on those servers with the intent of getting it up to 1580 to have it dragged over to these servers and get a free 1580. The reason why I'm saying this is that I don't think it's not going to exist there. I actually think that these players are going to quit faster than we quit because they're going to deal with these douchebags on these Jumpstart servers. If that makes
I'm
sense.
not very
Exactly how I feel
articulate,
about it.
but like when there's always a chance for someone to have an ego, there will always be gatekeeping, toxicity. Like that's just the basis of gaming nowadays. There'll always be people who are gonna be dickheads.
And we could go
there's-
down the route of why our server was boosted because of the bots and how kids just won't have level 10s yet, right? So that the overall economy will be more stabilized because it won't have bots just fucking it up, right? Hopefully, hopefully.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
so there's that concept there. What he's saying right now is with the egotistical people is I will say to that the egos can't be as bolstered because people shouldn't be as juiced. So how are you going to
Well,
deny
no,
somebody?
they can though. Because if you take Ronin as example, what was the last raid you did, Ronin? Like brown normal,
No, I did
right?
Kyan.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
if you're considering Kyangel, I did Kyangel.
okay, so like Ronin's coming back as a returning player, right? And he goes on a Jumpstart server, right? He's gonna go on a Jumpstart server, and he's gonna have to do like all this content, like Volton, Vicus, Clown, Rao, Kyngale, with bozos who absolutely know nothing about the mechanics. There's gonna be people, not saying that Ronin would, but like other people who are returning players that have already done raids and know the basic mechanics.
Oh no, I'm not.
They're
I'm
gonna
not
have
saying that.
such an ego.
I'm not saying
No.
that. I agree with you that the ego will be there. The reason I lowered the bar of the ego was like where I'm at in the game. I'm getting gatekept because I don't have level 10s. I guess what I was trying to say there was yes, you are right.
Okay.
People will gatekeep based on experience still, and that's where I said it will still be a problem. That's why the initial point I said it'll still be an issue. But where I think that the gatekeeping will calm down is that him being an experienced player, you being an experienced player, how are you going to gatekeep him for not having level 10s if you don't have it? That's kind of what I meant. But I do understand what you're saying. But I actually agree with you 100%.
But I was mostly asking. That's the general consensus on why they seem to be making this change with the jump starts, right? Is they want.
I mean, the
people-
game's dying. They need to get new players in.
Yeah, so
like,
the
I don't
idea
know.
is they want new players to play with new players and learn together and build camaraderie. That's what it sounds like, at least.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm
Is
guess-
the game
I'm
dying?
guessing- I just realized, like, I guess one way I could look at the Jumpstart servers is like, say I am new, right, and I start on a Jumpstart server. Well, I basically have a grace period. I have a grace period during this Hyper Express Pass to go through and not get gatekept and learn all these raids. But once that's over, I better have learned all of those raids because now begins the gatekeeping. And if anything, I feel like it's going to be even more sweaty because pretty much because of the tinier pool that you have, everything's going to be marked up, right? It's actually going to be even harder to progress there than it would be to be over here on an established server with an abundance of lower tier
Cheap
mats.
materials, yeah. Oh my god, great point. Yep.
Whereas, once your grace period is over there, it's going to be really rough. It's going to be really, really rough because everything is going to be way more expensive. It's going to be way harder to push. You're going to have to restart everything. Hopefully, you're a new player. The only way it really helps you, other than the merge and the integration, would be if you're a brand new player, you have your grace period, but you still don't really even know what's going on. But if you really work at it, you get to learn all the raids basically for free. But then after that, you're playing in a harder server, and you're gonna have a harder time than you would have had otherwise. But hopefully by then they would have integrated.
Right?
Well, I did
Well,
want to bring...
for a brand new player, it'd be different. When you've done every boss before the next boss, if you've learned each mechanic, so the next one isn't nearly as hard, then it's not a big deal. But when you're brand new and you can't even do Vault and Vicus is alien.
He's right.
And when Vicus is alien, Clown is impossible.
Yeah, you built
but
skill sets.
Vicus they've nerfed to the ground. Vicus.
No, but he's right though. You've built. I mean, we had a nerf version of it. We still struggled compared to Korea. He's right. You built certain skill sets.
True.
you learned how to counter with the grizzly bear, right? So the point is you've built certain skill sets that have compounded on other skill sets this entire time. He is right with that. The first raid that we got that had chaotic elements to it was Clown, and then the next one was Brel, where random shit could just be happening and flying around the ring that you had no idea was happening. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
in that
true.
regard, he's right. You build compound skill sets that have allowed you to be to where you are as a player.
Yeah, because if you're a new player, say you're a new player, right, and you guys are in Argos, and you actually have to do the mechanics. Yeah, they have to learn Argos first before they can even understand
Oh,
Vulcan.
bro, I can't
Once
even imagine landing August again.
Well, I was mostly asking because it seems like the consensus of what the developers meant by making the Jumpstart servers or putting that change in. And I just kind of wanted to point out there's better ways to do this than doing something like a Jumpstart. Because it's kind of like y'all pointed out. One, first and foremost, when you started playing Lost Ark, more than likely you were playing with a friend or a guildmate, and they convinced, especially if you're coming into the game and it's already out, you've got friends playing. You don't just pick it up out of nowhere planning to play solo. Like that's like unrealistic. I mean, there may be the outlier, but 9 times out of 10, you're playing because a friend's like, "Hey, you should play. It's fun."
And they did
So
do that. What you just said is 100% true. And they two things to add to what you just said. One, they did do that by making all the green runes free and the blue runes free, all the tier 2 shit free for the players on our current servers. That's a better add and a better fix for this than anything. To fix the gatekeeping for the players in our region, genuinely, it's going to come down to the community. Like, no matter how hard they try or what they implement in the game, until these players have the time to learn the raids or put the time in, and this is what I was going to say, there's an inherent sacrifice that these new players kind of have to make. And me and Lights talked about that when he first got back into the game, is that you have to struggle. Like, you have to be willing to pay your dues, so to say, to get up to where the other players are. And unfortunately, that is not something that they can, in my opinion, that they can fix from a logistical code standpoint at all. It's a community-based thing.
I actually feel like they can in certain ways because usually what it comes down to in a raid when someone's new and learning, it's not so much the gear or the skill level is preventing them. It's literally just like they haven't done the fight enough to know what you need to do when certain things come or know what to look for. It's the experience in the fight itself.
I feel like a
And
super
again,
simple solution to this problem is just simply by adding a practice mode. Like
that-
you add a practice
They
I,
mode
have
so
that.
people can practice it.
They have that.
No,
They
no,
have
no.
the
it's not the same.
You
It's not
have
what
you have it
no.
for Brel and Clown, but the thing is nobody does it. You're a new player. You're never going to be able to
so
utilize
better
that. Why
incentives in the
can't
practice mode.
Hold on.
yeah,
So
I imagine that you have another thing just like Prokel and Trixian where you can go in and you play these bosses and you see what you have to do and you can practice it, and maybe when you complete it on solo you get a title. Like, hey, look, I've soloed this in a practice run. I know every mechanic.
yep. This is what I was going to segue into because there is ways to fix this. It just requires some very harsh changes, meaning they're going to have to put into development and probably not see a big return outside of adding a bunch of new players to the game. I want to point out Dungeon Fighter Online because they actually had a similar. I want to point this out because I'll probably be bringing up DFO a lot because the games are very similar in how they're laid out, and DFO has a very more streamlined. Like they figured this stuff out way quicker, and the game was easier to add stuff to, so they were able to do it on a faster pace. So I kind of feel like the eventual point is they're going to have a solo mode that's they call it guide mode in DFO,
I'm gonna stop
where
you
you
there.
get
I'm gonna stop you there because we're gonna go into our next point because you just said that. Is that okay with everybody?
oh,
Yep.
I'll let you finish. No,
hey,
no, you can finish what you were saying. I do
I
want.
literally got I literally got like two like this. This was it.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead. You say what you were gonna say. What you just said is perfect because of where we're segueing next. Go ahead.
Okay. Because like I wanted to point out they had like a guide mode for like the fights there. For every raid that comes out, they release a like kind of like he said, like a practice mode, but you're allowed to do it by yourself because a lot of the gatekeeping exists because
That's
they
the
don't
key.
know the
Solo.
mechanics. And that helps build that player that like I had a ton of friends that did sideways content in Lost Ark and never touched raids because they didn't want to upset anyone running like especially like Misfit Cat when she came in. We were very accepting teaching guild. She never wanted to do anything because she's like, well, I don't want to like cause everybody else struggle. And I think that's where a lot of like you got the toxic guys that are gonna be, I just want through this every week. And that's what the jumpstart's gonna do. You're gonna have dudes going that server with another character. It's just another character to them. It's just another leveling boost for them. It's nothing different for that person.
Let's
You're
pause
gonna
it there. You're right. what you just said is beautiful. It's just another character. Them lights. What you said was also just stunningly amazing and beautiful. Like you guys are coming up with some of the greatest, coolest things ever. But before you ruin it, lights, because that's what you're about to say. You were gonna ruin the next point. Let's jump into the next point. We're gonna talk about the raid changes that they're making to the game. And for context, Ronan, some of the raid changes they're making to the game is they're removing some of the more difficult gates. They're shortening the raids so that players like that just want to get their content done, it's just a character, then will have a little bit more free time and won't spend so much time on the game. But they're taking out, for a quick rundown, they're taking out Gate 1 of Kyangel. They're making Gate 2 easier. They're removing Gate 3 or Gate 2 and Gate 5 of Brel, and they're making Gate 6 every 2 weeks for gold collection and doubling the rewards. They're removing Gate 1 for Vicus. But this is the part this is why I kind of wanted to stop us, and I'm so sorry for cutting you off, but because one of the bigger changes they're bringing to the game is solo raid content. And just to add to what Light said, what I thought was beautiful about what you had said was giving them a specific title, showing their expertise or experience in doing it is huge. I think that's massive for this game because it's all about titles. But with that in context, we're going to go to Buttery. We're going to let him take it off from there. But
Hold
just
on.
keep that in mind. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I was gonna say, can I start this one because it's gonna kind of segue off of what I was last talking about.
Yeah, why not? We can have fun with this, of course. Yes. So just keep that in mind. That's what one of the things they're doing is they're actually bringing solo content to the game.
Yeah, because my continuation is actually gonna go perfect into this. This is why I asked to go first. Because essentially with DFO, when you had the guide mode, right, you earned half of the raid materials that you would earn from doing the big mode. So you had incentive to try to play with other players and figure it out. But you could, if you were uncomfortable, you didn't want to, you thought you were going to be too much a hindrance, or you tried it once and you know that you need to learn the fight better before going into it instead of just watching videos. Like you can do the solo mode to get the content eventually. You're just going to earn it half the time as you might in the other doing the group. But this is the other thing I want to point out. Instead of doing a jump server, they could have just had a progression event where only like new characters can they're like separated from the world inside the same server. So they're separated into their own little thing. Like say you have the novice tag inside Lost Ark, you can't see non-novice tags. That's actually a pretty good change that's worked in a lot of games because DFO is not the only one that's done that system. Rift used to do it, and I'm sure WoW had something similar. I've never played WoW, so I can't really confirm that. But
so do you want to add anything else to that? I know you just covered the solo aspect perfectly. Do you want to talk about how they're removing certain gates and making some gates easier to shorten the time for the more elite go players?
Yeah, I will actually point out too that if they start removing gates, it kind of feels like, again, I said this before, I don't like old content being removed in favor of not adding much more. I get that they're trying to save time, so maybe if you're gonna say remove a gate, maybe give the option to run it, just if you want, because that
or
way
skip it like Brel. I
know,
swear to God, I said the same thing.
or
recently.
gate 0, yeah, like
yeah,
gate
exactly,
0.
Gate 0. Thank you. Yep.
Because if you did that, you give the people who just want to get their weeklies done on like 3 characters the option to go through that. And I will add this too. Another thing they could have done for the dungeon finder when you're looking for a group is instead of like having us type out our things, they really should just have a separate. If you're doing a learning raid, there should be 2 different distinctions for that. There should be learning and like solid clear. Or
Easy UI option, 100%.
And like that's something simple to change, and all they would have to do is add coloring to the font, like learning in light blue, and that party is like either teaching or learning, something of that nature, because it helps separate. No one reads that title when they join a group. I'm being real, and I've done this. I can say this with a different perspective because I've done hundreds of teaching rates in Lost Ark. Like I taught. I mean, Evolved knows. I was just talking with the static we used to run in. Prior to that, I was teaching people months after Brel came out how to do normal Brel. Months after, and these people had never run it.
And
6
Vicus.
fucking fresh
You spent
people.
like 8 hours in one Vicus.
Yep, and it's teaching people, and they're cool. They're learning. It's just like they're slow to it. When everybody did their first run, they probably took some time. Is what I'm getting at, and it was like teaching a whole new raid. And I got more of like, wow, I missed this. I can connect with people when I was teaching. I was having fun, just sitting there chilling with people. And so like, I feel like you would have more opportunity for people to do teaching raids if the UI was set up better to like split that. I feel like a lot of times people get lost in the sauce when they go through the list and they're not even reading that title. As like how many people you get that like say you go how many times have you just clicked into a raid and you're looking to pug it and you've accidentally went into a bus not realizing it. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
I've never done that ever.
Well, you
Just me
can
personally.
you can be our next
I, I,
segue.
I always read the title before I join a lobby.
I was gonna say you take
But
it next
I don't know.
anyways.
Maybe that's just me. Okay, so first of all, with the removing gates, yeah, like I was telling you before, I am very sad about them removing Gate 1 Vicus. I don't like the idea of them removing gates that I've already learned. Just I spent the time to learn these gates to get rewards, you know, and then now they're just getting deleted. That feels bad. I'm glad I'm not one of the people who mastered Prokel just for it to no longer matter.
Yeah.
But I guess it is what it is with the removing gates. Can't really say much about that. It is what it is. But with them adding solo content, as far as I'm aware, that's only going to be for the lower tier raids, right? Like the higher tier raids, it's still going to be party
No,
only.
even Kai and go. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is it
I'm not gonna answer this because I don't know that.
Legion raids too? Yeah, I'm not sure. As far as I was aware, it's really only going to be the lower tier raids, so like Vault and Vicus. I'm not even sure if it was going to be with anything above that, and I'm wondering how they're gonna like set that up for you to be able to do it solo. Um, but I feel like the important thing about that is like they have to somehow keep the difficulty. Like it can't just be a pub stomp. Like you can't just go in there and do simple brain dead mechanics, not even get any better at the game, and then just get your gold and leave. Like it has to be something that it actually takes skill. Like it needs to be skillful because if it's not skillful, why are people gonna play in a party? I feel like the solo it needs to be more difficult than the party. So if you're good
Oh,
enough, you can just solo it. But
no.
if you're not so skilled that you can solo it yourself, then you can go hop in a party and now you know the mechanics from playing it solo and failing a million times, but you know what to do now because you were able to just run it over and over and over, and it didn't matter if you died or not because you're not wasting anybody's time. You're just practicing. So
Oh,
that's really good.
I'd
But if
like to
it's
add real quick. I just want to add to that. I could even see them removing gold as the solo mode and just giving you pure mats. So you get full mat for clear, but you don't get any gold for weekly. So it's an incentive to run it with a group. And you can't just use it as a farming tool. I think that would be a good solution.
I don't see that happening because I think the whole point of them adding this in the first place was just so that you could do that solo. But like I was saying, if the solo isn't harder than the party play, then nobody's gonna play the party play. And then how are the people that don't have enough skill to solo it or enough eye level to solo it gonna find lobbies when nobody's playing it at all anymore? Like as if there wasn't already less people playing those raids. If everyone that is still playing those raids can just solo it, there's going to be nobody playing those raids. So it has to be harder in the solo content, and then it
He's right because I
incentivizes you to
soloed.
play in a party in order to have an easier experience.
You're right because when's the last time somebody grouped up for a chaos dungeon?
Exactly. Why are you going to group up for a chaos dungeon when you can go in there
True,
with your
dude.
preemptive strike betrayal and just kill it yourself instantly? If you can do that with Volta and everybody, Volta and Vikings are going to become trivial. It needs to be something that is like difficult. If it's difficult enough, it's going to actually become really fun and it's actually going to encourage people to learn later raids because they're going to get really good at doing Volta and they're going to get really good at doing Vicus. And because of all that practice from doing that, they're going to be better at the game. And then now they're going to actually want to learn Clown and they're going to play better in Clown. They're going to want to learn Brel. They're going to play better in Brel because they've mastered Vault and Vicus.
Okay. Butter, you want to take it?
Yeah. First things first. I've sent a screenshot in podcast chat. I'm gonna primarily miss Vicus Gate 1 for the meme content. Like the screenshot that my friend took of my character in the cutscene.
How do I see that?
If you go to the podcast
Open the
chat, you
chat.
can open the chat. I've tagged you in it so you can see the pop-up. My point of view on reducing the amount of gates, great. It's really good because, well, why the hell was Brawl Stars 6 gates? It was just way too long, way too boring, way too time-consuming. Even mostly on progress, it's less time-consuming now because people know the raid, everyone's over geared. People would rather do normal mode for quickness over hard mode because hard mode difference is only 2,000 gold. My problem with the Legion raids is why do we have these lieutenant type raids? Like, if we think about the early raids, Volton and Vicus, right? The most problematic gates are not even the main Legion commander themselves. It is the entry gates. It's gate 1 doing the orbs. That's always been a pain point for pub groups of Volton. It's gate 1 in Vicus as well. That's always been a pain point doing the orbs, and they nerf that. Clown was really good. 3 gates. You fought Clown the entire time. Belshazzar, that's where the problem occurred. You had 6 raids. You only really fought Belshazzar at gate 5 and 6. Akan, really good. Most people, or at least people I've talked to with Akan, their most hated gate is gate 1 because of the poison mechanic. Which, to touch on the back attacking earlier, if you have a lot of back attackers in your group, in Akan gate 1, that gate just becomes even more painful because you're getting continuous stacks from his mechanic. And then gate 2 and 3 for back attackers is kind of chill. They're having a great time because gate 2 you can counter a lot. Gate 3 he hardly ever moves, and you're primarily at his back anyway for the entirety of gate 3. You're hardly ever in the front because that's where most of his patterns happen. I think the most annoying thing about raids is the reduction in gold. And the reason for this is the current state of the game, we set 6 characters that we do 3 raids a week on. That's 18 raids per week that we can earn gold. Okay? I'm going to take 2 characters, for example, here, okay? Sorry, 3 characters. I've got my main 1580 Sork, my 1560 Gunslinger, and my 1490 Scrapper, okay? So if I chose 3 of those to do my raids on for the week, that's 9 raids that I committed on, okay? So we go over my Sork, which is 1581. I do a Khan, I do Kyengale hard mode, and I do Belshazzar 1 to 4. Kyengale and Akan are the only 2 relevant raids because they only give me relevant materials to push to the next tier, which is 1600. Belshazzar is just a gold raid, it gives me nothing. If we go to my 1680, I do Clown, Kyengale, and Brel. They're all perfect raids, except Clown doesn't give me the required materials to push to 1580. It's always old content materials from the previous relic set tier. So I'm just doing that for gold as well. And then on my 1490 Scrapper, I can do Clown, Vicus, and Voltan, all for gold primarily, because at 1490, that's when I should be doing Brawl Gate 1 and 2. But I have 3 raids to complete, so I should be doing Brawl 1, 2, Clown, and Vicus, right? Vicus Gold's been nerfed. Clown Gold is going to be nerfed in the future. And Belshazzar's Gold's getting nerfed. So on my 1490 Scrapper, the only raid that's giving me relevant materials is Belshazzar 1 and 2. Okay? So I'm doing these 2 other raids that give me no value. If we split those 18 raids up across a game like Lost Ark, where you're incentivized to play more ults rather than just 6 characters, so this is where a lot of people have got 16, 20, 25 characters, it makes more sense. Sorry, give me 1 second. It makes more sense to split those 18 raids across 18 characters. So what that would mean is I can do Akan and Kyengale on my Sork. I could do Brel and Kyengale on my Gunslinger. And then I could do Belshazzar 1 and 2 on my Scrapper. That's 5 raids across 3 characters. And then I have 4 more raids that I can put elsewhere on actual characters that need materials for the relevant raid. That's my primary issue with raids.
Can I ask a question there just to clarify?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
don't know if
yeah.
I understood that correctly. So what you're basically saying there, and I think it's actually a really good idea, is that instead of having 6 lockout characters, have a lockout amount of raids you can run, because then you could run it on characters that actually need it, and not just getting it for the gold, but they're also getting the materials as well.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's actually,
Because
honestly, that's one
primarily
of the
what a
best
lot of
things
people
ever.
do is they push with bound materials, and occasionally will buy materials to push if they're sure.
Or yeah, even as an alternate, you could even make it to where you have 3 raids. Every raid kind of gives you like if you do a raid, all the gates, you get X amount of gold for doing it, and it's always going to be the same. But you've only get it for your say 3 or whatever number they decide. Because then if you just like a certain raid, you can run it too, and your character's already done. But you like playing that character. You don't want to
Yep.
just
It
rerun the
incentivizes you
same
to play
raid.
these alts that you're making as well. Because if I do
Mhm.
Belshazzar, or sorry, a Khan on 3 character on 3 characters, and then Kyangel on 3 characters, that's 6 raids, and I still have 12 more raids to put across another, I don't know, 10, 15 characters. So you can spread out the gold, and you can also spread out the raids you're doing more. So you can get more characters up, and you can also start getting and generating more bound materials for them. Because the
Another
problem
added
is, you're doing these raids that don't give you any value other than gold.
Yep. And
Like Belshazzar.
another added bonus to that too is that they talk about, you see it already, that you don't like, old content like Vault and Vicus. There's not a lot of groups doing that stuff anymore. I mean, you do find some, right? But if
Card
you
runs.
implement a system like that, it also promotes running older raids on another character to help people who haven't done it before that have
Exactly.
to do the content.
Because even if you're doing it on eye level, on an alt character, you're still going to be a lot better at the raid than most people who are new.
And you're gonna have a lot of tips for people like, this is what I did when I first started, and this is what I learned. So like maybe like, oh well, don't be in this position when this phase starts because you're likelier to get knocked off the edge, or you can offer insight as well. So it would also double up in affecting the newer players.
Yeah. Sorry, I know I went on a rant there.
No,
Thanks
it
for
was
letting me
good.
go.
Ordinarily, I wouldn't do this before we move on to the next topic, but I actually want to add a piece to this. Usually I just do the context, but I actually liked what you said so much that I wanted to add to it a little. 2 things. One, the relevant materials concept. Boy, is that the truth. Like, it really is the truth, because you end up... but I haven't an answer to it, though. It is true that you don't actually get relevant materials on your characters. Like, for a little while, where we were just doing... Brel, when Brel was the top piece of gear, and we had Clown and Vicus beneath that, 2 of our raids weren't even giving us mats, which meant that they were all gold, and that's it. But to that, and I just want to say to that, what I do believe what they're doing there, what by design, what the game design concept there is, and I'm not agreeing with it, I'm just saying that I do think I understand what they're doing is, you need more gold at the higher end in some ways. Not only gold, but more gold. So I think what we're actually witnessing is them turning it back on its head again, and I'll get to that in a second. I'm sorry, I'm trying to put this together, but basically, what we saw for a little bit was where we were at Kyangel, and we didn't really need the mats as much as we needed everything else to get to 1580. We needed more of the gold and the arrays and stuff like that to get there. And I think what they're actually showing us is that they definitely are slowing the game down, because they just did something that we haven't seen since Vault and Vicus Clown, which is we have 2 or 3 raids in a row giving us the same type of material, i.e. Akan, Kyangel, and Thameen are all going to be giving us materials that, or Voldyke actually, leading us towards Thameen. So does that make sense, kind of? That I actually think that they did that intentionally, and I'm not saying I like it or agree with it. I still like your ideas, and I love that we would go that direction. But I do really believe that it was by design. That the middle ground right there, I think Brel was their end game. So they didn't really plan beyond Brel as hard as that they should have. So you have Brel following into Kyangel, and that's why we actually see Kyangel get split, and eventually they updated it and changed the rewards you got. Does that kind of make sense? That the funnel they're creating here was about gold, because at the end game that they had in Korea, it was more gold oriented with everything that they had. Whereas now, because Esther weapons, all that stuff, whereas now it looks like they're trying to revert us back to material priority by giving us raids that give us more materials than the gold.
I mean, they've completely gone back on themselves as well with the Extreme Volton that they've just released. They've brought Volton back, and a lot of people loved it because it was Hell mode Volton, but not exactly Hell mode, because you could go in with like full juice characters with Elixir and make it a lot easier. Like now that throwaway, this is just to tide you to a Thamine is now going to be regular content because people liked going back and doing Volton, even though it was once every 2 weeks.
Not to run away from what you just said, but did that kind of make sense though? That ratio
Yeah.
concept, like at the beginning of the game, it was like they had us funneling those types of materials, and then they had that break point at Brel where it was Marvelouses, which come the fuck out of nowhere. Superior raid, like when you think about it, it's really that only one raid that it covers, right? Now that Kyangel is now at that next level with
Yeah.
Marvel, the only thing that Marvelouses and Superiors got used for was Brel. It almost looks like it was their middle ground or their end game that they got stuck at. And that's why I'm saying if you look at it again now, the same. I'm just repeating what I said basically because that's really what I wanted to drive home was that it looks like they're flipping it backwards again. They're flipping it to where you're going to have 2 or 3 raids at a time having relevant materials plus the gold, which is basically talking about what you're saying. I still love what you said about having 18 lockouts total. I like that way better. But it does seem like by design is all I'm getting at, is that looking at it from an outside perspective right now, what you said, it seems like that's the approach that they're going for, is that they're turning... Go ahead, yep.
I was gonna say you can definitely tell if you just look at the content that it was by design that they intended Brel to be in. Kyangel is just kind of an added thing. Because if you look at it, like when's the last time we got like the Abyssal Dungeons in general, right? And then even when the Abyssal Dungeon came out, Kyangel feels way different than any other.
And Argos was the beginning of the Vault and Vicus materials. Remember, that's a great point. So it's almost like Kyangel is the same thing as Argos to kickstart us into that next branch of materials before Tier 4.
Yep.
It just seems like it's by design. And then to go to my other point that I wanted to make was, you talked earlier about having 6 raids for Brel is ridiculous, Legion Commander, and I would agree with that from the perspective of having 6 characters to do it on. But I will say, if you have 6, the reason I'm saying this is if you have a 6-character roster and you're running 1, 2, or 1 to 4 on Brel along with your other corresponding raids, we'll just say that your gold would be X amount, and I think that the reason having 5, 6 is important, or having more gates is important, is for a character who plays 1 to 3 characters, or a player who plays 1 to 3 characters on a roster, because they would, 1, have more time than you do playing 6, but 2, those extra 2 gates might make up the gold difference for them that they don't get by not having 3 additional characters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of tell that because they up fronted the gold too. Like you got majority of your gold from the first 4, anyways, for doing them. So like 5 and 6 definitely felt more optional, but it also felt more fun too. I'm gonna be real. If I was to pick my favorite 2 gates out of Brel, yeah, it was fun learning like 4, and it was fun doing Procol and stuff. But 5, 6 feels like where the raid actually begins. Partly because you're fighting Brel, but also partly because of the way the mechanics work. They're meant to be team oriented rather than one person not doing their job.
I'm going to give a hot take here before we move to the next topic. Gate 5 wasn't that bad, even on prog. People are just bad.
It was easier than 6. I don't know why the 5 people had a
Yeah,
problem.
same, bro.
But I think the mechanic, it was more over because, again, you get to like 5, 6, the mechanics aren't based on like someone doing the right thing when they have a very exclusive job. It was like everybody kind of coordinating, and that's where it kind of threw off.
Yeah, it's kind of that one bozo can destroy everything.
Get good. Lol.
Well, like, because everybody still has a job in 5 and 6, right? But it's definitely more like you have to communicate more, for sure.
I mean, I can talk more about how the average player base is bad,
Terrible,
but I don't think we want to be here
No,
for another hour.
we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah.
That was beautiful in every aspect of it. So,
Can we
Alright,
make
let
the
me-
next point the last one because it's nearly
We're
11
getting
o'clock at night here.
yeah, we can totally do that. All right. So with
Yes.
that in mind, then let me pick a good one. Then hold on.
Yeah, but while you're picking that one, I'll just say on players being bad. I liked Kyle Eligos pre-nerf. Everyone hated Kyle. I thought Kyle was good. I thought Kyle Eligos pre-nerf was a really good Guardian.
I'm gonna stop you because I wanted to do 2 more, but we can't because you're right. We won't have time, obviously. So because it's gonna be a 2-hour podcast. So let's just jump right into the next one. I don't mean to cut you off, but let's
that's fine.
Jump right into the next one.
Just do like a joint thing, like offer an opinion if it can lead in.
We can always do another one too. Like that's the thing. You guys got the bullets. We can always do it again. But there's nothing stopping us right. We have time. But let's go ahead and throw it in there. So the last one was I had a choice between 2 topics. And how about this? I'll let you guys pick the 2 topics. So it was either we were going to talk about 8 Voldis importance, or we were going to talk about 10 what's after Thamine for the game. You guys pick. We'll do a 2. We have 4 votes. So fucking we'll have to figure it out.
Personally, I think Voldike's more. We can talk about Voldike more because I've got more points on
Okay,
Voldike.
so 1 for Voldike. What about Light? What do you think?
I don't really have much to say about either of those topics really. So you guys can pick. Doesn't matter to me.
I was gonna say about the same thing because that's future content when like I'm a ex player
So maybe this
returning.
isn't the best last point then.
Okay.
Like it's okay if it's where you guys want to go.
I mean,
and
I can talk about
I'll let her
Voldike and the
check.
importance, and then you guys can
No,
just
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
piggyback off that if you want.
I can lead off of some, or I can have someone lead and then jump into like what
Okay.
adding my input.
So we'll do
That's
the same
kinda
thing. We'll do the same thing. I'll
Right.
start with context. He'll go, and then you guys can go. Voldike is the newest content / raid that they're going to be giving to us. What you get with Voldice is not actually a gear change or anything like that. You're actually getting a whole new system of damage boost, which is called elixirs. And to my understanding, elixirs is a thing that's only for damage classes. If correct me if I'm wrong, Buttery, and I'll let Buttery take it from there.
Just to correct you, no, there are things for support, but it's not that good for support. I think, from what I remember off the top of my head, don't hold me to this. In terms of elixirs for support, it's primarily health efficiency, mana efficiency, and yeah, because I think the biggest ones are for DPS. There's elixirs that give you bonus damage to bosses, and then increase in main stats as well, I think.
Which, not
Been
to
a while.
interrupt, but that brings us back full circle to the support problems, just saying.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So to primarily start on the importance
How
of Voldike
important? Yeah, exactly.
is we have to also look at what's coming after Voldike, and that is Stainmine. The minimum item requirement for Stainmine is 1610. If you look at Voldike, it's 1600 for normal and 1620 for hard. The difference between normal and hard is obviously mechanical issues, but then there's also elixir differences in terms of you get, I think, epic elixirs in normal and legendary elixirs in hard mode. I think the maximum elixir bonus you can get on a legendary, I think someone said it's like 10 or something.
So can
It's basic. Yeah.
Can I
Go
stop
on.
real quick? So I just because I want to point this concept out is what this sounds like for them to be able to add to it later. What this sounds like is legendary engraving books versus see where we're going relic stones versus. So it sounds like a whole new added system. Following the same scheme that we already have of jewelry and stuff, following that, like, this one's better than this one, but we'll have 3 or 4 tiers of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So epic elixirs, 1600, which is the same item level as a con hard, are there to progress you towards pushing your character to 1620, doing Voldike hard, and making Voldike hard easier, and then getting legendary elixirs on that. So it's about that natural progression. But with natural progression, with Thamine coming out after, you have 1600 epic elixirs, 1610 Thamine normal. So the majority of players are never going to touch Voldike hard unless they want to push for those legendary elixirs because of how much it costs to actually push from like 1610 to 1620. Is the majority of players who are being efficient are going to push to 1610 and stay with epic elixirs. So the importance of Voldike is more about getting the correct elixirs for your class in the right amount of time, because there's also other associated costs with elixirs, like it costing stones of chaos in order for you to actually, I think, purchase an item called a catalyst, and then you use the catalysts to hone the elixirs. And how elixir honing work is it's like cutting an ability stone, but there's RNG involved in terms you have 3 sages that can buff your elixir RNG roll or drastically change what you're going to get in the cutting of that elixir on the next roll. And there's a lot of spreadsheet type math of like what's the best one to go for. But the importance of Voldike is more.
Just to clarify again there, though. So then, I guess why I said it is I was under the assumption, and I kind of still am based on what you just said, is that it's not really that important. that Voldis isn't the type of
No,
release.
it's very
bear
important.
with me.
Because,
Bear
yeah,
with
yeah.
me for a second though. It's not that it's not important overall. It's a dramatic change to the game. But what I meant by that is it's not as important as all of the other ones to be there day one. I guess is kind of, let me specify that its importance isn't
Oh, yeah.
really. It's not going to stop you from completing that content, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be really important till that 1620, 1630 content.
Actually,
Yeah.
I would say we won't know until the next raid comes out, like, because we don't have like a release schedule for that stuff yet. So depending how quick they launch that stuff, it might be really important to get there early because you might need more time to build. And then you always get the guys that are lucky too and get something really good early. So
I mean, I
that
think if I remember
that
correctly,
depends
Zeal
on
said at one point a really good elixir can be anywhere between like a bracelet, 10 to 20% more damage just on an elixir.
Yeah, and it's not just him. Saint and ATK both said the elixirs are one of the biggest DPS increases we've had in the game.
Well, that's
Like,
why I'm asking for importance, not in the sense of like how much it's going to help us, because now we know it's going to be huge. It's a whole new branch of things, like an engraving system or something. I guess what I meant was where we're at when this gets released, which is in a month or two, right? A couple of months. Is it that important for you as the players in the Western region to FOMO over it? I guess is kind of what I'm getting at, because I want to lead to that point that Buttery made about how he said something to the effect of like it's more important to get the right ones for your class and stay at epic, and I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. Should you be trying hard to push to get to 1620 to get a good legendary one right off the bat, or because this system is probably going to be the next year's worth of system that we're going to get, like we'll eventually get a relic one probably, is it better to maybe take your time and not rush it? I guess that's, maybe importance wasn't the right word, but it was the way I worded it in the notes.
We're not getting a relic
like,
one, but I think they announced today, as we're recording this, with Thamine, they're adding another convoluted system called Transcendence, which is going to work entirely different to elixirs. And they just keep adding these systems like elixirs and this new one called Transcendence that increases artificially the power of your character. Like, if you think about boosting your character, right? You have your attack power, which is primarily based off your weapon and then other factors like your engraving. You have your engravings that contribute to your damage. You have your gems that contribute to your damage. You have your card set that contribute to your damage. You have your quality that drastically can contribute to your damage, specifically for spec classes. The higher quality is always insane price. Then you're adding on top of that, we're then going to get elixirs with Voldite, which can drastically change your power of your character, as well as your braces as well. Like, good braces can be anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20% damage. Same with elixirs. A good epic elixir can probably be 5, 10, 15% damage. But then if you're pushing 1620 and you're going for that legendary elixir, that can push your damage and skyrocket even further. But the problem is you still have to get that elixir, and then you also have to cut it, which is another RNG based system like your bracer.
yeah, I will say too. I think I remember like saying early on that people hated bracelets because they're so RNG dependent, and to be fair, a lot of things in the game are, like, think ability stones and stuff. But I think he said that elixirs were more RNG dependent than any system we've had so far. So you could debate it. It's going to kind of depend on when the next content that we're actually going to need elixirs comes out, because we're going to have an X amount of time to do it.
That's what I'm
Time
getting at. That's exactly what I'm getting at. Like, is it one of those systems where if you try to push it too hard too soon, is it going to punish you? Because listen, in the past, this is exactly what I've tried to warn people against with the YouTube channel. Was a lot of people push things too soon and then their account suffered because of it. And I think this is one of those systems where if it's going to take 8 months for it to be valuable to the account, like they mean hard, let's say, or they mean normal, if that's when you're going to need it by, should these players, I guess essentially what I meant by that is, how important is it? Like, is it important for you to get to it, do it fast, put all your fucking resources into it immediately, or is it one of those systems like what Buttery kind of said, where we should take your time, get it as you get it?
I think it's going to be dependent, because you
Yeah.
can get really lucky and get something really early, but the thing is with RNG, generally the earlier you start, the more advantage you're going to have, because you're going to have more time.
100%
You're
law of
essentially
averages.
condensing that
Yep, law of
time
averages.
down to a smaller area. So if the raid comes out really quickly after elixirs comes out, the next content we're going to actually need elixirs, then yeah, it's probably going to be pretty important to push it. Now, if you've got some time, it's still probably going to be important because again, you're condensing that time down by doing the rolls and starting it earlier.
More
But it
shots at a
depends on
target,
what.
you're likely to hit it too. It's law
Yeah,
of averages,
It's
100%.
like a
It,
like a 9-7 rod.
it just depends on how much you're willing to give into it. So like,
So
FOMO could be worth it. Like maybe it is expensive, but maybe you need that expense if your RNG's bad.
Let's let Light add a piece to that.
just to add one primary point
Uh-huh.
before Light jumps in, this is how I primarily look at the importance of Voldite, right? We're doing a con normal now. At least the majority of players that are not whales or like super into the game and have like 7,000 hours. The majority of player bases, I think you said in one of your videos before, is they have 3 characters at 1580. Okay, from doing a con normal week 1 to getting your con set completed, it's 12 weeks, which is 3 months. That means anyone that started in mid-August will finish their con set around the middle to end of November.
Real
Okay.
quick, actually, I have a question on that. So, because what you just said made me think of this. So,
Can I just finish my point real quick?
yeah, it was kind of add to
Okay.
your point though, so I understand something.
Yeah. So
Vol-
it's gonna take us 12 weeks, which is middle of November, right? To get the fuller concept. Get the fuller concept, and if you're not honing, you're only 1585. You only get 5 eye level. You then have to push to 1600, which for the majority of players is going to take a couple of weeks. So that means by the time you hit 1600, just generally casually playing the game, doing your con rates each week, you're going to hit 1600 as Voldike is released. But the elixirs add so much power to your character that by the time you're wanting to do and try a con, like a con hard mode, you're already having this artificial power from elixirs on your character that a con hard mode isn't going to be as hard as it was if you did it a week, 2 weeks before Voldike, because now you have an elixir that's artificially boosting the power of your character.
So, 2 things to say to that. One, the question I had was, is Voldice, because you can answer this quickly, is Voldike set up the same way? So this elixir concept, you complete the raid, you get like a pieces like you would a con eyes, and that's how you do this?
You don't get pieces. I think it can happen after every gate. I'm not sure on that.
But
It
so
might
I
be
guess
at
what
the
I'm
end.
saying is, do you get bracelet drops? Is it like a drop that you're getting?
Yeah.
Or
It's called a catalyst. You get this catalyst. You take that to the 3 sages, and they're like, "Hey, yo, bro, we can make this catalyst do this thing."
And to clarify,
And
so is it a guaranteed amount? So like you get 5 eyes every Econ gate or whatever. Would you get 5 of these everything? And is there something like that we're
I
getting?
don't know what the specific quantity is.
Just
But
the
I
ideology
know.
there. Is it something that you're guaranteed getting, or is it something that's always
So I
RNG?
think it's the amount of. So if you look at ability stones, for example, you have a 10 stone. So you only get 30 chances to cut a stone, right? I think with elixirs it's similar, where with the epic catalysts, you have a low amount of chances to cut an elixir.
Just
with the legendary
not to keep interrupting. That's not what I mean. I genuinely mean like the loot table of the raid. Is it you kill it and you got bones? Okay, so there's
I
no
don't think there's a
bones or
specific
anything
amount.
that you get from this boss.
I think you might get like 1 per gate. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a while since I watched 80K or anyone.
No, that's okay. I'll figure it out too. But
Voldike.
that was the clarification I wanted. Was is it something like the eyeballs? Because you said 12 weeks to get it. So now I'm thinking in my mind, you have to do 8 weeks of Voldis to even get one of these.
No. The 12 weeks to get it is to get your concept for
It's
Voldike.
okay. No, that's irrelevant. I'm just saying that concept. That concept.
No.
Do you need to do 8 weeks of Voldis to get one of these?
No. You can get them. You can get them week 1. And you can start cutting them, but whether you cut a good one is entirely RNG based.
Okay.
It's like cutting an ability stone.
Nope, that's fair. I just wanted to know how it was obtained. That's it. If there was bones like Vicus wings and shit like that, and now I understand that there's not. And then to add to that, I would say to what you said last and your point, which is it would make a con hard easier by the time you're actually doing it. I would actually argue that that's why it's even less important. Because you've already been doing this content most likely, and now it's just kind of making it easier. It's already able to be, I guess it's already able to be done by players with the appropriate skill and gear, and yes, it'll make it easier, so it's good for farming it, but it wasn't required or important to actually complete it. And then that brings us to that next concept of, it might make Voldice a little bit easier, but you're going to clear Voldice without it in the first place, so therefore it could be completed be completed without it. Therefore, it's also not as important for that content. So that brings us to that next piece of content, which is either hard Voldis, like 1620, or Themine, which is 1630. And then that's where the argument
1610.
16. Okay, so no, even better. So and then so only Themine in this conversation, Voldis hard and Themine are the only two places where I see that it's necessary or may make a massive difference or importance to that concept or to your build overall or to your damage overall. And I'm not saying that it doesn't make the other raids easier. I'm saying that how required is it really? And I'm not saying again against Ronan what Ronan said doing it sooner is better. I'm just saying that overall it does seem like it's not that important for the average player or most players to actually try and push that to do the current content. As a matter of fact, I would say that until Themine, which may be 8 months to a year out from now, it's just not important.
No, that's
Well,
also
Hey,
like-
let me go ahead and chime in
Yeah,
real
go ahead.
quick. So,
Yeah.
mind you, I knew basically nothing about this until I heard all three of your takes, and honestly, like just looking at the concept of everything you guys just told me, it sounds like the most obvious debate I've ever heard. Like, in my opinion, definitely not worth it at all. Like, not even close. It's to me, it sounds like the clearest, most purest debate ever. You don't actually need it. It's super RNG. There's just no point. You might as well get it when you get it, and if you don't, it's fine. That's what I got
and
out
you're
of
not
all
saying
that.
not to try. Like, still try, but you're just don't fucking spend resources on it. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's no point in pushing or hurrying or trying to get it as soon as you can. No, there's no point.
And definitely don't do 6
I-
characters for it. I guess is really what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, not even close. It's gonna take
Unless you
time
want to.
either way. You'll get it, even if you push as hard as you possibly can. You might get it.
Still
You
get
probably
fucked.
still won't.
Yep, I spent
And
100K on
yeah,
ability stones. Like, you might
debate, dude.
still, yeah.
No way.
Okay.
No,
Not
to
a
be
chance.
fair,
I would never.
I was not recommending anyone to do it. I was saying if you're gonna be the guy who wants that big damage increase and you're willing to spend the gold on it, you can, as well as getting out.
And do it
would
sooner
probably
than
be-
later.
I mean,
Yeah, if
okay.
you're that dude that's like gonna drop the extra money into it to get that like damage, it's a big damage increase as well as getting out. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
If you're the
it's-
top of the top, you run 90 qualities on every item.
yeah,
You're always
exactly.
the highest eye level. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Keep pushing everything in the game and get everything in the game first. And yeah, that's for that player. Any other player, I really don't see why you would even worry about that.
Well, to be fair, I feel like most of the systems in the game are kind of built that way, where like if you aren't willing to drop a ton of money right away, you forget getting it like early.
Just like
Like it's,
TVs and new iPhones, it's better to be late to the
Yep,
party
yep.
sometimes.
you
Yeah,
gotta
yeah, yeah.
remember
Yeah,
all the
you can buy it
content.
on drop or don't. Doesn't
You gotta
make
remember
too much of a difference either way.
all content that has dropped up to this point has been clearable with somewhat mediocre gear. It just makes it easier when you have that like super geared deck people. You know what I mean? Like you could do vault and eye level. You didn't need badass gems. I mean, most of the YouTubers already told you that. People just don't think that way when they play the game. They meta chase, and you've got gatekeeping, so you have that element to think about.
I mean, the other element to think about is just the sheer amount of stuff it's going to cost to push even higher than 1600. 1600 so 1600 just from your 12-week con, you need 1.4 million shards. To push to 1610, you need close to 3 million. To push to 1620 Voldai card, you need 5.2 million.
I mean, yeah,
Like the cost staggering in terms of just shards alone.
yeah, and that's the thing to think about, right? Is like you can clear a lot of the older content with less stuff. Like really, you can clear most content up to this point with level fives if you really wanted to. You could do it, right? So the more you increase, the easier it's obviously going to be as far as like a group if everybody's increasing their
Yeah.
stuff. But
I
like
mean,
I said, you could do Kai and go with level 5 gems. What's stopping you, really?
in the long run, it all comes down to me on the importance of Voldike is, do you want to do content on item level? If the answer is no, and you want to be higher, you're gonna have to spend a lot. And it is better to do stuff on item level, which for Thamine 1610 and for Voldike, it's actually 1600. And like just looking at Voldike alone, right? You get these elixirs. If you go to 1620, right, and you over home, you're already over item level for Thamine by 10 item levels, which is actually pretty huge. And then you have your legendary elixirs on top of that. So the only real reason for the importance of Volike is if you want to go to hard mode to make Thamine easier for normal Thamine. That's the only importance for me, because legendary elixirs give you a lot more than epic in terms of damage and return for your time invested.
That makes me wonder how hard Thamine's going to be. Not to segue off of it, but that does definitely make me wonder.
Yeah, they've said Gate 1 and Gate 2 is relatively okay and easy. Gate 3 is where it's going to get more challenging. And that even then, like we were talking about earlier, that's why are you fighting lieutenants for these raids and not the actual Legion commander itself? It doesn't. They're even telling us before Thamines even come out that through their internal testing, that Gate 3 is going to be the harder gate, and that's actually fighting Thamine. Fighting his itty bitty lieutenants is going to be the easier part, and you're going to overgear that if you go to Voldike hard.
To be fair, I mean, lore wise, that kind of fits in. So
now,
yeah.
Ultimately, do you guys want to sum this up? Because we've done great.
Yeah. Voldike hard, important. Voldike normal, just chill and have fun.
Well, I didn't even mean that. I meant the whole podcast.
Okay.
The whole podcast.
I mean, as far as like just the general future, it's a very hit or miss thing. It depends on all of these changes and how they implement them. So like, it could go really well, it could go really poorly. It just depends on how much faith you have in what they decide to implement. So like, we talked a lot about, like the server change, the jump servers and stuff like that. Those are all systems that could work if done correctly, but it just depends. We're gonna have to kind of wait and see on how it launches.
You sum the whole podcast up for me is supporter shortage, extremely easy to fix. They need to work on their freaking class leader schedules. Like Soul Eater should have 1000% been a support instead of a DPS. Jumpstart servers, and maybe too little too late. It's going to suffer from the same issues that the regular servers do, just a lot sooner, because most players are they going to be playing Jumpstart servers 2-3 months down the line. And raid changes, they could do better by making 18 raids instead of 6 characters. Final topic, Voldike, only really important if you are wanting to push hard mode. Otherwise, just chill and don't FOMO and do normal when you can.
Okay. I actually like how you did that. I didn't know how to end this, so that worked out too. Ronan, do you want to kind of do what he did? Just a quick summary of all 5 topics?
Yeah. Like I said, some of these systems are going to be it just depends on how they roll out. They could be smooth, they could be rough. It just depends. I will say that I never feel like people need to push based on what others say you need to do for gatekeeping. I've always been a fan of going at your own pace. So if you don't feel like something's all that important, you shouldn't do it. Go on your judgment. Use others as advisors, not so much as a leadership thing. And that's something that people in Lost Ark don't tend to do. You have people say you have to have 6 characters, you have to do yeah, it definitely makes things a little easier, but it's also a lot of time investment. If you don't have that time invested, don't worry, don't stress. Play at your pace.
Okay, Light, do you want to do the same thing?
Just to sum it up, I feel like all we really got to say is honestly the game's looking a lot better than it was for a long time. There's a whole bunch of movement. There's a whole bunch of changes. They're working. They're grinding. It's obviously looking way better for the game now than it was before I came back. And then there's a reason why I came back, and there's a reason why I'm still playing as a returning player. So I think overall they're doing good, man. Just give them some time. They're trying. They're making changes. Even if the changes aren't good, they'll change them again. So I think overall it's looking good for the game, dude.
I definitely agree. They've kept communication open pretty good, so I think they heard a lot of feedback and they're definitely trying to make a lot of fixes based on what people are upset over. I mean, just look at the Guardian Raid change and, and the Chaos Dungeon change. Like, no one ever thought they were gonna like make those changes they did. So
yeah, we didn't get to that one topic, but
we had too many topics.
I mean,
next time.
yeah.
Yep.
I just wanted to touch up there. So,
I do want to apologize to you guys. I know I picked a bunch of topics, but I gotta be honest with you. I really didn't expect. Like, I'm gonna go obviously edit this and review it. I didn't expect this good of perspective. Like, this was a great group. Like, this was so good, and there was topics I really wanted to cover personally to vindicate myself because I'm an asshole. But the reality is I'm actually happier with the flow. This had a natural flow to it. You guys saw the notes that I sent you guys. We didn't follow the order at all, and it actually had a really good flow and came full circle in a weird way. So I really appreciate you guys for coming in. I really appreciate
No
you guys
problem,
taking the
man.
time out of your life to do this. We spent 2 hours doing this.
Thanks for your invite from your biggest hater, by the way.
From your biggest hater, yeah, I know, dude. I was gonna put that in the comments too, but or the title. I don't know. I'm still working on the title.
Wait,
We'll
no
figure
way.
it out. Yeah, he was the dude that I. Oh, you haven't seen that video yet because we haven't uploaded it. Oh God, yeah, he was the dude that I thought removed his comment, but didn't remove the comment, and then we
Oh,
had,
no
yeah, we
way.
have a whole I can't ruin it. I don't want to expose it, but
No. Next time,
yeah, exactly. We
Let's
have a whole
let's
thing
close
for it,
this
so.
video. Let's close this video.
But thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Like, comment. Please comment your beliefs and what you guys saw with a lot of these points. There'll obviously be timestamps. If you don't watch the video, that's your problem. Have a great day.